OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's Tuesday morning, it's 7:30. I'm here, Shane is here. Shane, how are you?
Good morning.
Welcome back.
How are things? Thank you very much.
Colm is also here. Colm, how are you?
Morning, Ger. Welcome back, Shane.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to get involved this morning, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream, youtube.com/off the ball. Make sure you hit subscribe. You can text us on 0879 180 180, or you can also, of course, get us on Twitter at Off the Ball AM. Shane, you were in the Stretford End.
Stretford End. Yes, yeah, for the Barcelona match.
All right.
Cracking atmosphere, I have to say.
Oh, your voice is still gone.
Is it still gone, yeah?
Yes.
See, there was, of course, the Carabao final on Sunday. I didn't get tickets. Tickets were upwards of 1,300, 1,400 quid, which was fairly steep. And then the snooker in between in Wolverhampton as well.
You weren't shouting at the snooker, were you?
I wasn't shouting.
Or is the atmosphere at Wolverhampton snooker competition?
The Aldersley Leisure Centre in Wolverhampton.
Oh, yeah.
Which is exactly as it sounds. You get the little, come on, Sean, in between. You get the little shouts, which makes it enjoyable. It's a great sport to watch, snooker, in person. You get your beers to your seats. Some people have had maybe too few many beers walking down the steps, the quite noisy steps, and then they have to stop every time there's a shot about to be played and then continue the steps. It takes them about 3 minutes to get down the stairs. It's quite hilarious.
How many people are at the Aldersley Leisure Centre?
I want to say there was upwards of maybe 300-400 possibly in attendance, which is a decent crowd, decent atmosphere. But yeah, it was nothing compared to the Stretford End.
And are tickets expensive for the snooker?
They were actually reasonably expensive. We went to the quarters and semis, and they were £35 per day kind of thing. So, I mean, it was worth it, to be honest. We were trying to kill a few days in between Thursday and Sunday, and it was the perfect way to do it. So why not?
Yeah, okay. There's nothing else to do in all of England. In the broad sweep from Manchester down to London, there's nothing else to do apart from catch the snooker in Wolverhampton.
No, exactly. Yeah. So we actually watched the Carabao final in Manchester in
right.
the Quadrant pub, which is in the shadow of Old Trafford. So got the atmosphere of the locals.
Pardon my Manchester knowledge, not great, but is the area around Old Trafford not a bit of a kip?
Industrial area, isn't it?
It's industrial.
Yeah.
Chorlton come Hardy, I think, was the area where we watched the match. It's only about a 15-minute walk from the stadium. It's not as bleak maybe as around, like it was at Aston Villa quite recently, and it was reasonably bleak around the stadium.
Spare me your whataboutery, Shane. But
Wolverhampton also fairly bleak, as it turns out.
And is there not? So is it a thing where Man United fans go to Old Trafford even when the game's not on?
I think those pubs, certainly, even there's the Bishop Blaze very close to Old Trafford, where there's chants before the matches, and the Trafford Inn as well. A lot of fans would go there to watch games.
Oh, whenever the team's away.
Exactly, yeah,
right.
yeah. No, it was all locals. We were the only probably tourists in the room, but it's a pub with United jerseys and old photos and stuff on the wall. Is the Quadrant, so definitely it was a good atmosphere. But I couldn't believe the atmosphere in the Stretford End on Thursday. It was unlike anything I've been going to United matches for a long time, and that was something else. There's just a different feel around the club, and I think that connection between club and supporters is at a level now where it hasn't been for years.
The bandwagoners are back.
Well, I don't know if it's that.
The team is good again.
I think it's just people.
Is that it? The hardcore are like, okay, finally we have a team worthy of our attention and love. Is that what you're saying?
Nah.
That's it sounded like a little bit like what you were saying.
Is it the opposite of the bandwagoner effect? Because you were saying that the atmosphere was like nothing you've ever experienced at Old Trafford in recent times. So does that mean that it was quite partisan feel to it and passionate rather than the day trippers?
Yeah, I think so. I think Jer's not having that. Well, no, I know what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to say.
Post-fact rationalisation that you can just
it's a
get a little NFT of that, folks.
It's a question, more than a statement, sir.
Yeah,
there's
the
a
atmosphere was always great when the team was terrible. No, we were. It's all. This is our version of us being relegated to the second tier and following the team week in, week out. That's it.
Look,
we had to live through the Glazer era where they were the highest spenders in world football. It was terrible.
Which is still ongoing. And by the way, sorry, see this idea, notion that Manchester this notion that Manchester United fans only chant anti-Glazer chants when the team is losing. I can tell you for a fact, Stretford End 2-1 up against Barcelona, like really, really vitriolic hatred of the Glazers, and I know it was there at Wembley as well on Sunday, but
you get extra bonus points for that, Shane.
Yeah, 100%. But it was just it was incredible. It was something different. I felt like I could do no wrong, so I wouldn't be much of a gambling man. But before the game, I had a dream the night before the Barcelona match that Fred was going to score, so I put a few quid on Fred anytime goal scorer against Barcelona, which is a fairly random shout.
Some finish.
And then I was in the pub with the brother before the match, the Carabao final, and I was just flicking through a couple of odds, and 12-1 Casemiro man of the match, and I was like, 100%. Casemiro, if he plays well, he gets man of the match. He's just one of those people who cleans it up. He's like Parky Song, a big game player, and it turns out it was a nice one. Casemiro man of the match.
Life could not be better at the moment. I was on Instagram there this morning, and it was his birthday, celebrated with the family, wife, his 2 kids, a boy and a girl, in a lovely house. Turns 31. Just scored the first goal in a 2-0 win in United's first trophy in 6 years. Everything's coming up, Casemiro.
And the way he was giving it loads to Bruno Fernandes after the match, saying, why didn't you pass?
Yeah, that was interesting.
In a kind of a joking way as well. I was listening to the show yesterday, lads, on the way back. I was driving the brother was driving rather. I was in the passenger seat from Manchester to Holyhead to get the ferry, and listening to the show, performance rankings, and Nathan's take on Bruno Fernandes. I couldn't believe it. All Manchester United fans at the moment, granted, Bruno Fernandes, I can see how opposition fans would think, he's a bit of a dose, he goes down fairly easily, but I mean, Bruno Fernandes has been very, very important for United in this, if you want to call it a rejuvenation.
Are you trying to manufacture goodwill towards you now?
No, hang on. No. I'm sorry. You keep going here, Shane. I do want to say though, right? I was facilitating the performance rankings yesterday. I'm not a Manchester United fan. I haven't watched every single second of every game. Unlike Colm, who just sat there and took that. He just sat there and let Nathan,
as you saw,
and let Nathan go with that. It was like,
but did you not hear what I said? I saw his point to an extent. I saw his point.
So you agree with him?
No, I saw elements of his point. If I disagreed with him, I would have illustrated the point.
I have to say I disagreed with him. I was like, no.
I think he hasn't been great this season, but I'm not forgetting the contribution that Bruno Fernandes has made. United.
Did he not start badly and then be brilliant for about 15 games? Was he? He
played a lot of minutes as well. By the way,
he was bad when everyone else is bad. He just hasn't come along with the rest of them, in my opinion, by his own high standards.
I think the day Ronaldo went out the door, he's improved. He's gone that way, and it's like he's been brilliant.
I wouldn't say he's been brilliant.
I think he has.
By his standards, I think he's slightly underperforming, but he's had a huge contribution to United.
He has more left in the tank.
Positive.
Is that your point? He's more left in the tank.
Yeah, I think everyone's raised their level to a certain standard, and he hasn't quite got there by his own high standards. So I definitely saw truth in Nathan's point.
I think we're all talking about Rashford, but I think it wouldn't have been what Rashford is doing right now wouldn't have been possible without Bruno Fernandes. He's been key cog. He's been freed up by Ronaldo leaving. There's no doubt about that. But he's been a key, one of the first names in the team sheet.
Has he also not now got a very bespoke job in a team where you have a job and everybody, if they do their job properly, they're going to win more games than they lose, as opposed to keep coming back to the tactically anarchic, and that's gone, and so now he fulfills a role and it's less flashy and less showy and maybe a little bit less obvious. And I don't know, that would have been my take on it, but it was just interesting that you threw him overboard at the first opportunity when Nathan was there, and your first act is to stick it to Nathan when he's not here to defend himself either, Shane. So
well, look,
Manchester United fans covering themselves in glory this morning is all I would say.
The fact that you're raising that point suggests that you disagreed with Nathan's take. Because otherwise
I said I was facilitating the conversation.
Yeah, but because otherwise I think it's a fair point that I said okay. I mean, I don't have to disagree because I did think
no, it's fine.
There's definitely elements of truth to it. I didn't think he was great on Sunday. I don't think he needed to be great. Your point, Shane, about Rashford's form
what's his role?
Improving because of Fernandes, I would say maybe Casemiro's influence, Rafa Varane, Lisandro Martinez, the manager, of course. With Fernandes, my overall point is definitely not as strong as Nathan's in terms of he's been a big disappointment. It would be halfway between yourself and Nathan. I think he has more to go by his own high standards.
But what are your expectations? That he's still the same, I'm doing everything, I'm carrying the team on my shoulders? Or is he not just actually generally taking the ball, keeping the ball, and when an opportunity presents itself, trying to play the killer pass, or probing the defence 3 or 4 times until one of those comes off?
I think Bruno Fernandes' biggest strength is probably his numbers, his goals and assists. So he has a fantastic knack of, or had a fantastic knack of scoring vital goals and regular goals, and was great for an assist. And I think if you take away those two elements of his game, he's a perfectly fine to good to very good midfielder, and that's what he is.
You can't just take away the goals and assists.
That's the report. Yeah, but I mean, at the moment, you're not getting that from him. So the other side of it is that he isn't this really expressive, creative midfielder. I don't think, anyway. I think he's a very, very functional, at the highest level, high-octane functional midfielder with a real goal-scoring threat. And I just think he has more to give.
What did Gino De Campo say? If my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. Like, if you take out his goals and assists.
No, but that's my point at the moment, that you are taking away his goals and assists, and then what are you left with? And that element of his game he could improve. It's just I think Fernandes has been one of the best things that have happened to Manchester United for the last 3 years, 100%. I just think he can be better.
7:40 this morning, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. Tommy Rooney is going to join us in about 20 minutes time, 15 minutes time it says there, to take us through the latest edition of the GAA Power Rankings, Gaelic football ones. Derek McNamara is going to join us in studio to run through the stats to see how well our two 10s so far compare against each other, and also against Finn Russell, who it turns out is player of the tournament in many people's eyes so far, certainly in the English papers. We've got sports news we'll call at 8:45. Tom English is going to talk to us about Celtic and maybe a little bit of Scottish rugby. Tom Dempsey is going to talk Wexford hurling at 9:15. We'll play out some James Ryan goodness at 9:30. Sorry, Mike. At 9:30 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. Two things we want to talk about before we go any further: the FIFA Awards, and then also Chidozie Ogbene. Man of the match last night, scores for Rotherham versus Swansea, 1-1 draw. Ryan Manning assists Swansea's goal like seconds into the game. Ogbene gets a chance and it comes off the crossbar, off the upright.
Off the post, yeah, lower post left footer, 20 yards out.
And you're like, oof. And were they 1-0 down at half time?
Yeah, well, Swansea were 1-up. Yes, they were 1-0 down at half time. Yeah.
And they kind of need to start scoring, but come with the hour, come with the man. He said afterwards that the transfer speculation hasn't settled him. Let's hear a little bit of him talking to, I think this is BBC Sheffield.
You know, there's a few people that have been questioning your kind of performance levels over recent weeks. So to get a goal and put that in, that must have been big for you tonight.
Yeah, I think, you know, playing for this club means a lot for me, and I think the gaffer sat me down and said maybe I'm trying too hard, and I think that was really special for me, just to calm my nerves, because I really want to do well for this team and want to do well for this club. And sometimes when you try too hard, you do too much damage. So I think I just came out here, and Wayne was making it clear and before the game, just to play calm and play free, and don't try to worry about too much. Take it one step at a time. I think it really helped me massively, because we're all human beings. No matter how much games you play, sometimes you can tense up and make mistakes, and I'm just so happy I had that support around me.
It's Matt Taylor who is the manager. It's not the Matty Taylor, is it? Is it?
I find with Ogbene, his attitude is remarkable. He has so much self-awareness about where he is as a footballer and his need to improve. Just a supreme attitude. And I know that Colm is the first team coach at Cork City and trained Ogbene when he was junior in Cork, and said this is the exact same guy you're seeing now. He used to drop him to training, and they discuss his performances in both training and matches. And Ogbene's first reaction each time was to point out his mistakes and where he can improve. And he's just has such a huge appetite to get better as a footballer. And here you are now in the Championship. He's his club's top scorer with 8 goals and 2 assists. And for those who didn't see the goal last night, it was so well taken.
Took it very well.
He basically slipped on the ball 6 yards out, and obviously many players would panic in that situation, but he readjusted, and a lovely improvised finish and a crucial goal for a point. And then it could have been an Irish love-in, because Georgie Kelly had a chance to win it for Rotherham right at the end. Keeper made a great save.
I don't think it's Matty Taylor.
No, it's not.
No, Roy Keane story.
There. It's another Matt Taylor.
Turns out it's a common enough name.
That's unfortunate. That would have been a good Cork connection there. It's great for him to be back scoring goals. He went on to say in that interview that the recent transfer speculation, as he said, is only human, had unsettled him a bit, but just coming into a bit of form at the right time.
Yeah,
I like this. I like Irish strikers getting rumoured with transfers, because it means they're doing something right. A striker doesn't get linked with clubs unless they're scoring goals. Let's be honest.
And he's
Well, Fame scored at the weekend off the bench. Now he just needs to get into that team, because if he can get into that team, they're doing so well. He could stay in that team and go on a scoring rip. So all of a sudden, and Adam Eada's back fit. There's a bit of strength in that. I did want to put Ireland strikers in green a few weeks ago. I got overruled.
You did?
You're looking like Muppets now, lads. Should have let me do that. We would have been like, as we said 5 weeks ago, it's all coming up roses from an Ireland striking perspective.
Did we not do it? No,
we didn't. No,
we didn't do it.
He's a great man for hindsight. Like,
it
was
2020, isn't it?
At the time, it didn't make any sense. It makes sense
it makes
now,
perfect sense now. Yeah.
That's
the whole point about seeing around corners.
Just like the Newcastle take.
It's like, too late now. It's like,
well, you've changed. I never said they could finish top 4.
All the Ireland strikers. I didn't. It's not. I didn't change my take.
See, they've gathered momentum now. The Irish strikers. So the point means more now. But you see, like Evan Ferguson getting linked with Newcastle as well in the last 24 hours or so, which fills me with I don't know what. But
look,
it makes sense. Dan Ashworth is at Newcastle now, who was, of course, at Brighton previously, so knows Evan Ferguson very well. So
I presume that's just handy for everybody. It's like, this guy.
Yeah.
Who are the former players who have played under him who are doing quite well at the moment? Okay, yeah. Well, that's just like that's. I mean, if you were
comparisons with Alan Shearer in one of the Newcastle papers at the weekend. Which is no pressure whatsoever.
We've obviously been leading the hype train. It's time for it to just we'll pull into the station there and just refuel. And after he scores a hat-trick against France, we can all get carried away again.
100%.
Is it good for us or bad for us that the pictures of Kylian Mbappe in the papers this morning are of him brooding darkly about not being given awards last night? Is this a good thing or a bad thing for Ireland?
I think it's irrelevant. What the individual awards aren't going to affect the demoisture he may well inflict on us.
Well, fully tuned in, angry, vicious Kylian Mbappe, he's not going to have any impact.
But he's always like that. He's always got a bone to pick with someone, doesn't he? Usually Kylian Mbappe makes up a reason to be angry. Turns out he's a good footballer when he's angry. So hopefully he's not that angry when he comes to Dublin. But it's certainly not gonna help. I mean, I'm sure the Irish centre halves are currently thinking about coming up against it. I guess he's coming down that right hand side, isn't he? Like Seamus Coleman playing well at the moment. Yeah, Matt Doherty can't get a game.
Matt Doherty 0 minutes at the moment.
You can't displace the World Cup winner Molina. He took the winning penalty for Argentina.
Well, yeah, it's fair. But Coleman starts that game, doesn't he?
I think so. Certainly, I don't see any credible alternative unless you start Coleman on the right of a 3. And you also have Doherty there so that they're doubling up.
Does Ogbene start now because of the goals, yeah?
Well, it definitely adds to the options up front. It'll be really interesting to see who he picks in the final third against France. I think the one thing you have to go for is players that are playing, which is kind of rules out Doherty, unfortunately, even though he's at he's the most high profile club that we have.
Yeah.
But if he's not playing, he just can't play against France.
There's no universe where he doesn't start Evan Ferguson, is there?
Fitness-wise,
I guess
I'd be very surprised if he didn't.
He hasn't started a game yet, has he? Or has he started against? He's come back from injury.
He did recently. Yeah, he got subbed. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the only thing would be that they don't think he's fully fit, or it would be too much of a load for him. But it's such a big game. Everybody wants to see it.
Oh, throw him in, lads. Throw him in. Can you imagine? I can see it now. That Evan Ferguson a winner. That's what's going to happen. I've seen it now. I mean, I called Fred and Casemiro. I'm calling Evan Ferguson. Seeing it all, lads. It's going to happen. But look, the fact that Stephen Kenny has options is a good thing.
Yes, options are good. I think there's a good chance Ogbene starts, but if Obafemi, like his record of big goals for Ireland is something that you don't forget as a manager.
Yeah.
And Ogbene's a brilliant substitute to have, especially if we're going to be chasing a game at some point, which we might be.
Yeah, I mean, and he's got a little bit of pace as well, a bit of aggression and physicality to his game. And those French centre halves, I mean, Upamecano's a unit as well, so like you might want an Obafemi in there. Evan Ferguson, of course, fits that bill as well. So I'll be fascinated to see who he opts for. It's probably the forward options are the most complicated for Stephen Kenny, in a good way, because he has that strength and depth. We've got the options, and turns out now they're all coming into form at the right time. So long may that last.
Yes, the big winners in the FIFA Awards last night. Football's biggest bastard won goalkeeper.
I love the way you can see who voted for who as well.
Yeah, that's a fantastic addition. So you can go onto the FIFA website.
There's no hiding.
And click on about 2/3 of the way down the page of all the winners. You can actually click on each category and see who voted for who. So it goes through the captains of every country and the managers of the countries as well. Unfortunately, now that we're live on air, this actually takes a while to generate each player's or each captain's choice, a manager's choice. But Seamus Coleman, his voting is exactly what happened. So we have it on screen there as one example of it. So obviously it's very hard to see, but Seamus Coleman, for example, that's an example of what you'll actually see if you go onto the FIFA website. So if you see something like that kind of spreadsheet look there, you're in the right place. Seamus Coleman's votes: Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappe and Karim Benzema, which I believe was the top 3.
Stephen Kenny's gone for Mbappe first, Messi, and then Haaland third. Interesting, yeah.
Right, what were the actual top three again? Give it to us again, Colm.
You had Messi, you had Mbappe, and you had Benzema.
In that order?
Yeah, 1 to 3.
So Real Madrid didn't
Descending
show
order.
up yesterday because they knew what was going to happen. They were like, oh, too much weight has been placed on the World Cup. It's like, yeah, okay, well done, Real Madrid.
You kind of have to wait the World Cup, don't you?
I mean, because,
it's the World Cup.
It's also the FIFA World Cup, and these are the FIFA Awards, where FIFA are going to tell you that the most important thing is their thing. It's possible that at the UEFA Awards, the Champions League might have a slightly higher weighting. But, the clue is in the name there, Real Madrid.
Jermaine Genius on hosting duties as well, I saw. Congratulating Casemiro on stage for his Carabao Cup final win.
Your mate Jermaine, of course.
Jermaine, of course, yeah.
Where, was he impressed by your five-side skills?
JJ, I call him.
Right.
Because we're on first name basis now.
Well, I mean...
Yeah. He was impressed. He assisted one of my goals.
He's very good.
Being the term that I used there.
We
Sneak that in there.
don't need to explain it to us.
Yeah, of course.
We got it.
Yeah. Well, Colm was bragging about his five-a-side antics last week, wasn't he? Seven-a-side, rather.
Seven-a-side, yeah, that was
has to be
very
done.
good, yeah. Continuing my comeback.
Is there anything controversial about this? Like Emi Martinez, of course, he won the Golden Gloves. Of course, is it Golden Glove?
Golden Glove. Stephen Kenny, in terms of the best coach, voted for Scaloni first, Ancelotti second, Deschamps third, whereas Coleman, when it comes to the coaches, opted for Scaloni, Regragui of Morocco, and Ancelotti third. So it's hard to argue with any of these. You want someone to have voted for someone mental, like just a complete left field shout.
Oh, there was loads of those. There were.
You seen the Philippines?
The Philippines captain voted Jude Bellingham second best player in the world, and he is Birmingham City defender. So a lot of politics at play. Katie McCabe went rogue, so she voted for Beth Mead, Sam Kerr, and Leah Williamson, an England loving, but it was Alexia Putellas who retained it to a bit of a controversy. Such a high-profile player, of course, but didn't have exactly the most fantastic last 12 months by her standards, but she won it again, and a retention is the first player to retain it as well, so her high stock continues, but not according to McCabe anyway. It should have been an England fest, and it was. In the goalkeeper side, Mary Earps got goalkeeper in the women's game.
Turns out, Ben, just searching Bellingham here, he got 18. He was mentioned in 18 players, top 3.
Well, he had a voguish World Cup where there was one of those games where he was basically unplayable. Then it wasn't quite as effective for the rest of the tournament. So, and that's what you expect with young players.
Ralph Rangnick picked Bellingham third. He went Messi, Mbappe, and Bellingham. I mean,
you forget Ralph is in charge of an international team. Austrian manager.
Yeah.
I mean, to look out for the results actually. Look, it's a handy insight to have.
But you see, we say that, right? It adds something to it for us, so we can see who voted for who. But then it also does it take away a little bit of the legitimacy, because then you see some players voting for teammates because they know their teammates are going to read this. They're like, I better vote
but
for
that's how.
Do you want that?
Always how it works,
But is anonymous voting not more accurate?
I think maybe you don't get everybody to vote if you do it anonymous. They're like, oh, no one's got to find out, so how am I going to do it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, it adds to it.
As Kathleen said before the show, if your own teammates don't vote you, number one, does that mean you can possibly be the best player in the world?
That might mean they think that you're like a bit of an asshole. That's
what I was thinking. As a personality clash.
They have personal information, insight into what kind of a teammate you might be, or you took their parking space. Like,
yeah.
Love if it was that petty.
Oh, I mean, we're talking about elite sports people. Every slight along the way from the time that they were under 6 has managed to propel them to their greatness.
The motivation, the bitterness keeps you strong and improving.
Took that personal.
I suppose you need to do that. If you don't vote, if you don't vote for your teammates, who's going to vote for you? Do you know, or who's going to vote for them? I mean, but then sometimes you play against a player and you're like, well, they were unbelievable. You're like, well, I'm not going to vote for my teammates over that. You want to avoid a little bit of the bias. So, was it Sophie Ningle didn't vote for Kerr, her teammate? You get a lot of that.
Seamus Coleman voted for Carlo Ancelotti.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what kind of a relationship they had. Carlo Ancelotti has likened Seamus Coleman to Sergio Ramos in the past, but he didn't. He was the one who said, "Oh, we haven't got to deal with him because he's got an endless deal."
I wonder, does Coleman have issues with Emi Martinez, because his top 3 goalkeepers were Courtois, number 1, Yassine Bounou, the Morocco keeper, or Bono.
Sorry, hang on. This is Thibaut Courtois, who was man of the match against who? In what game? Liverpool in the Champions League.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
Seamus Coleman is going to the Everton fans. Look what I did! I voted Thibaut, everybody. Look, I voted for Thibaut Courtois.
Maybe that's it. But like,
I mean, there's no politics there. There's just like absolute.
Kenny also went. Kenny went Courtois, Alisson, and then Emi Martinez third, whereas Coleman had Ederson third.
Yeah. He had Ederson third.
Coleman had Ederson third, and Kenny went Courtois, Alisson, and Emi. Like, you can't leave Emi Martinez out, can you? I know Seamus Coleman, as you say, has his reasons, but I think you got to include him potentially. I mean, he's up there. Like, Courtois was a lot of. Who won the glove? Emi Martinez, you were saying?
Yes.
Okay. You can't really argue. Maybe it is the World Cup, too much weight.
He kept the most clean sheets in the World Cup, and his country won the whole thing.
Oh, and he also saves, like, at the very last minute of the game. He's like produced a world-class, all-time great save in the World Cup final to keep
Not 1
the
on
World
1,
Cup.
yeah.
But does Courtois' performance in the Champions League final not come into this time sphere as well?
It does, yeah, but
I think if you win the World Cup and
to go back to the bit,
FIFA, UEFA, is that it?
FIFA World Cup, FIFA World Awards, right?
Okay, so
That's it.
So
Like,
Champions League doesn't count.
Champions League does count, but it counts less. There's one every year.
Well, that's a fair point, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make it any less important. There should be a World Cup every year. Come on.
No, there shouldn't.
It's like the Allianz Leagues, we want more.
Speaking of the Allianz Leagues, there's a suggestion floated today about bonus points, VPs.
I like it. There have been far less goals in both hurling and football this year than last in the league.
What are we giving the bonus points for? 4 goals?
4 goals is a lot, isn't it? I don't know what the suggestion is in the examiner, but I think maybe you get a bonus point for
3 goals?
For 3 goals, maybe.
3 goals.
I mean, that would lead to, like, the Clare hurlers would have got
2 bonus
two
points?
bonus points.
You get an super extra bonus point.
I think
if you get
deserved.
6, we give you 3 bonus points.
Maybe, yeah. But it's along the Six Nations format, isn't it? There probably is a way you could.
Could I suggest that maybe we get 3 points for a win first? Like, so that the 2 draws don't equal a win?
Yeah, the draws have a massive impact.
They're absolutely, completely outsized. You know, you could basically draw your way to safety. It's like, well, you didn't win a game.
Is that why you see?
But you were unbeaten. But you didn't win a game. But
Yeah.
you were unbeaten.
That's true. Like, you see so many draws in the football, especially, and maybe that's it. Teams are like, well, yeah, 2 of these and we're grand. There's a win. So yeah, look, I managed to. I caught them on a Roscommon game on the GAA goal there at the weekend.
As predicted. As you predicted, it was.
Well,
like,
I was bigging up Roscommon all week, but I knew I'd feel them on and would get the job done.
Needs must.
Yeah, this is the thing about Division 1 and Division 2 football, especially. In fact, all of the leagues in football, the team that needs the points most, generally speaking, will get them.
With some notable...
some exceptions, of course, but like Roscommon didn't need anything from that.
Kildare and Meath definitely desperately need points.
You think Kildare will? I mean, 2 relegations in 2 years would not be good for a county that has the pedigree of Kildare.
Not great, no.
I think they'll stay up. They'll be safe enough.
I'm not sure.
No.
I mean, Limerick have so far been very bad, but Kildare have also been very bad, and so therefore it's like it's right there, you know. The Louth game this weekend is the whole hinge point. If they win this, I think they'll go on and they'll get 6 points. If they lose this, they're going down, I think. You know, so it would be between them and Clare and Limerick, but like you can see Clare pulling something out.
Well, Clare are the cockroaches of Division 2, aren't they?
Well, they've lost 2 games now with 5 or 6 point leads by not scoring in the last 10 minutes against Kildare and Dublin, which would suggest they're like playing relatively well and that their form is relatively consistent. And if they just get over the line in one more game, their scoring difference is vastly superior to Kildare, who got hockeyed by Cork and who got hockeyed by Derry at the weekend.
Yeah. Derry, I can't see any team usurping Derry in Ulster this year. They're just too good. And this isn't me playing cheekiness, bigging up Derry, but I actually think they're just unstoppable.
Derry are legitimate All-Ireland contenders on the basis of the quality, strength and depth, the evolution in their attacking play. Sure, look, why don't we put this to Tommy in our power rankings, which are imminent. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And of course, Byrne Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off The Ball. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience, and make sure you stay tuned to our Twitter account in particular, because we give away €100 of Applegreen Braeburn goodness every week. Up next, Tommy Rooney's much updated and much demanded football power rankings. First, here's some Fiona Hayes and Matt Williams talking with Joe last night about Ross Byrne's performance.
Fiona, on Ross Byrne's performance, it was interesting. So we were just chatting in the Virgin studio over the weekend. Matt Williams used the word excellent and Rob Kearney used the word competent. So why don't you throw in your word?
Yeah, I think I agree with the competent. I think he did his job. I suppose you have to look at the pressure that was on him coming into this starting game. It was a big game for him. He had he knew guys around him. We talked about that centre partnership, Ringrose pulled out last minute, would have made a big kind of impact in how he's plays. He wouldn't have been used to playing with either McCluskey or Bundy. So when you look at it from that perspective, or Craig Casey on his inside as well, giving him those passes. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think it was a good enough performance. So yeah, competent, good enough. Definitely still the number 2 to at the minute, but there was no point in the game where I was saying, oh no, Johnny's gone, let's get Byrne in her to that starting jersey. There was just nothing outstanding about it, but that's what you want. And I praised his kicking game a lot, Joe, and a couple of kicks that he's missed where they weren't costly in this game, but I'm sure he would have been disappointed with those couple of conversions as well.
Yeah, Alan Quinlan mentioned some of his kicking from hand, a few clearances, not exceptional by any means. He was saying that on the AM show this morning.
You're listening
to OTB AM. OTB GAA.
Scale has opened a war, definitely, with the football pod. Where are your power rankings now?
Tommy, I welcome you back to the show in anticipation of the Royal Rumble that's coming our way. Hurling pod versus football pod.
Will, you're a coward. I had to go off and leave my pancakes on the pan.
This is awkward.
What are you doing?
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Some of these critics, these pundits.
Generally speaking, I'd be a fan of off the ball. Exactly, and like Tommy knows football, obviously, I listen to football pod the odd time. And
when I was looking at the power rankings, and I thought that Jesus Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
But they just dismiss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
The new sting, I hadn't heard that. Very good. Tommy, how are you?
Morning, lads.
What's going on?
It's getting serious when the sting's in place.
There you go. You have some. You've got a rider here. No blue M&Ms or only blue M&Ms. Yours is don't ask me any questions until we get to the end, because they're so contentious. There are so many rips in the space-time continuum that if we were to get into every single one of them, we'd be here until Tuesday fortnight. By which stage they'll be updated again.
That's the thing. I took on the feedback last week that the people wanted the power rankings. And I sat down last night to do them. And you know what? I think it's better when we have that little bit more evidence. So will we just get into it? Because you'll see.
Okay. Before we do that, I'm desperately trying to, Owen hadn't established these are just correct, right? And it was his giant brain / ego that allowed him to get away with that. But you're taking a far more scientific approach to this. Can I ask you? So for me,
I am and I amn't, though, Ger.
For me, the power rankings are if there was an All-Ireland final and every other game was played between these two teams this week on the basis of what we know, as opposed to, because otherwise, for the last number of years, Dublin would always have been, because until they get toppled, you have to respect everything they've done in Croke Park in every final, where they've always managed to come back and win, right up until the bit where eventually they got beaten. But for me, that's what these power rankings are today. If we were to play a game,
so then the rankings wouldn't change at all.
No, they would change, because they would change on the basis of the information at the weekend. Like players are injured, players not in form, players not fully fit. So like Kerry aren't fully fit at the moment, and they don't have everybody available to them, and so therefore I wouldn't have them number one in the power rankings this week. But that's just me. I think your take is who's going to win the All-Ireland this season, is it?
Yeah, there's nothing else matters. Nothing else matters in the power rankings unless you win Sam. So
I know, but I want I want a massive overreaction conversation.
Have you seen them? Have you seen what's happened to some of the counties?
Well, let's go. Okay. So yours is who is the best team in the country and most likely to win the All-Ireland is what you have, and then it's ranked from 32 to 1. Is that what I
Yes. I put value on form, on the league. I think the league is one of our best competitions. I actually think this season it's actually been devalued because of how tight the season is. So I watched Tyrone on Saturday night. By God, I hope they have their eye on Monaghan in Ulster, because I just couldn't get my head around how far off it they were. And then again, it is February. But when I say it is February, it is so tight until Championship starts. It's 5 weeks. Championship starts in 5 weeks' time. So it's I just think that the power rankings, it needs to represent how tight this calendar is, because we're getting into the business end of the season really, really quickly this year.
Okay. 32 to 1.
Okay. 32, Waterford haven't moved. Give a little bit of context in the football pod this week, so I won't move any further than that. Carlow, 31st. 2 defeats in the last 2 weeks, 15-point loss to Leitrim. They are bottom of the fair play table. Carlow have had 5 red cards, 3 on Sunday and 4 games. One of the reasons why they've moved so quickly far down. London down 2 as well. So Carlow and London both down 2. Disappointing so far after running Leitrim so close. 2 7-point defeats back to back. 2 teams have moved up, and that's Wicklow and Wexford, both up 2. Wicklow bet London with a huge win before a huge win against Laois. Wicklow were 5-1 at the weekend, even though they'd beaten Laois in the Leinster Championship last year. So Bucky's got that one wrong. And they made a mockery of the pre-match power rankings too, so I had to move them forward. And Wexford, alongside Wicklow, have a bit of an outside shot now of promotion from Division 4. They've had a couple of big wins. So they bet Leitrim at home and then bet Waterford. Moving on, so Longford, Laois and Leitrim haven't changed. Sligo haven't changed. But after that, very few counties have been safe. Tip with a consecutive double drop. Despite picking up a first point of the campaign, it was up against Longford. 2 teams that can't buy a win, and they couldn't buy it at the weekend. They drew. They've also lost Stephen O'Brien since we were last chatting, so that's another key player. Tipper in trouble. Antrim have moved forward. Won a first win against Tipperary, but they have a bad habit of losing games in the last minute at the minute, lads. I don't know if you've seen it, but they were in command against Down, in command against Fermanagh. They conceded 1-3 in injury time, and it's agonising, but they've got to find a way of getting past that. Offaly down 1 after a decent start. They've lost the last 2 games to promotion contenders Westmeath and Cavan. They're going to end up where I thought they'd end up, which is middle of the pack. Fermanagh, good teams find a way to win. We mentioned Antrim there. Well, Fermanagh have found a way 2 weeks in a row to win back-to-back games in injury time. Sean Quigley, their main man, has inspired it with two goals that he flicked in somehow in injury time, and they've come back to win it. But Ulton Colm has been having a big influence there. He's somebody who had a bit of exposure to the AFL, so keep an eye on Ulton Colm this year and see how he gets on. Limerick are down to 19th, so they're 0 from 4. They got smashed by Cork. They just seem to be in a bit of disarray. Division 2 just might be that level above for where they're at. They also have the worst score difference in the country. 18th, Down have quietly moved forward once more. Another huge comeback win against Westmeath at the weekend. They'd only kicked 4 points, lads, after 50 minutes of play, but they kicked 1-7 without response then. 1-5 without response. Westmeath didn't score to edge that game by a point. They are now in the promotion hunt, and they're playing Cavan this weekend, so keep an eye on that game, because if Down managed to turn over Cavan, who are cruising through Division 3, they are absolutely in the promotion hunt. Louth, this is a bit of a contentious one. Rockton to Navan at the weekend, they emerged with 2 massive points. They're only in 17th place. That could change on our next power rankings, because the other 2 teams in Leinster could slide. The other 3 teams in Leinster could slide a lot more. Louth are in 17th place. They just have to prove it now. That's where I'm having that. So we'll move on, will we, to the third slide?
Yeah, I mean, we'll come back to Louth, obviously, but go on.
Yeah. Kildare are 16th. I still think they were blessed to beat Clare. And unfortunately, I think they showed their true colours again on Sunday, which is mind-boggling. I just can't get my head around it, how it's so bad at home in Newbridge. Maybe it's a psychological thing. Maybe they're feeling the pressure and the heat from the commentary of the Kildare fans who seem to think that... I just don't know how it's gone so bad so quickly. Maybe we can talk about that again, but it's just dire straits at the minute. The one thing I'll say to them, the one caveat is they have 2 local derbies left to save their skin. They've got Louth in RD and they've got Meath at home, so they've got to win that next game. They can still survive, so they didn't slide any further after that win against Clare. But 16th place. Cavan 15th, cruising through Division 3 as expected, but will that harden them for Ulster? Hard to see, and I think they need a run to the Ulster final to make the All-Ireland series this year, so I don't see Cavan raising much higher. Meath have slipped back to 14th, lucky not to slide further. Defeats to Derry and Louth have them in a bit of bother. The mood has changed a little bit. They need to get the finger out. Big game next week against Limerick. You'd expect them to win that. After that, they're going to have to pick up another point. Westmeath have moved back one. They've won one, they've lost one. Perhaps that place being guaranteed in time has let them take their eye off the ball a wee bit. Sources have suggested that Jack Cooney is back involved, which is interesting. And yeah, like Westmeath are where they're at. They should be getting promoted to Division 3, but maybe they're going to let me down in terms of where I had them in the power rankings. Cork up 2. James O'Donoghue's Cork, as it was christened this week on the football pod. Look at lads, Cork are the tip of a glove and the width of the post away from actually being in the mix to knock Dublin out of promotion places, which would have been some shock. Because if Dublin go on to lose to Derry this weekend, which I'd expect, Cork possibly would have beaten them on head-to-head. I know it's a big if, but they're actually in a great position. So they're top of the relegation fodder in Division 2. Clare this weekend is crucial for them. That game is in Ennis. Whoever loses that game is in big trouble. Clare in 11th, they haven't moved. I just don't think anyone has done enough to move them yet. We'll see after Sunday. Donegal have moved back to 10th, so they've swapped with Monaghan. So fair play, Shane. You've got a bit of movement there.
Thanks, Tommy.
They eked out another point at the weekend, which could be crucial to staying up. They did get the rub of the green. I don't know if you saw the Paul Conroy shot. Look at it. It probably went over the post, so you'll have to give the umpires the benefit of the doubt. But that's 2 weeks in a row where a lot of teams aren't getting the benefit of the doubt from the referee. Donegal have. So they're in 10th. I still have a feeling they're going down. Monaghan have had a superb 2 weeks, beating top of their table Roscommon and Donegal both at home. Their final home game is in round 6 against Tyrone, and you have to imagine the losers of that game go down. Moving on to the top slide, and there's been movement all over the place here. Tyrone are in 8th place, 2021 All-Ireland winners. They've slid back. Toothless is the word I've used a few times, and they were, whether it be defensively, offensively, just all over the place. It's frightening how much their attack has lost direction and how easily Mayo ripped their defence apart en route to their 4 goals. Roscommon have moved up 1 place, more so by virtue of how poor Tyrone were, rather than the Rossies' unbeaten record up until the weekend. Despite defeat to Monaghan, they're still joint top. There's 7 days between the Connacht final the Connacht first round and the league finals, as we mentioned last week. So maybe we're going to see Roscommon take the foot off the pedal. But looking at that Division 1 table, they're going to need another point from somewhere. So they have a couple of big games ahead. Mayo this weekend, that's going to be a weird one with the Connacht Championship game a month away. Armagh have slipped back 2 places, lads. I found that tough to do. I found that one tough to do, but they're actually only on 3 points here. The league form, the quarter-final against Galway last year had them higher, and I'm just not seeing that at the minute. They actually have a must-win game now against Donegal. So I've written off Donegal anytime we've seen them. Armagh have to beat them this weekend. It's at home. If they don't win it, Donegal are on 5 points and Armagh are on 3 points going into the last 2 games of the National Football League. So it'd be a disaster for McGeeney if Armagh were to get relegated this year. They're way too good for that. And I don't expect them to lose it, but that's where they're at, looking at form. Derry are the form team in the country. They moved up 1 place. They could have actually smashed Meath and Kildare by a lot more. I don't know if you watched the highlights there, but like they could have had 6 goals. Mark Donlan, I'd say, was actually nearly man of the match, despite Shane McGuigan kicking one 5 or 6. They have a real litmus test this Saturday against Dublin. I'd say Dublin are targeting it. I'd also say Rory Gallagher's targeting it to see where his team is at. Mayo up 1 place. Exceptional at times on Saturday night. It was very entertaining to watch them. Really, really enjoying how varied their attack is. Like they're running it when it's on, they're kicking it from distance when it's on, they're hitting it to Aidan O'Shea when it's on, and they're going for goals as much as possible. They've thrown off the inhibitions and there are good vibes about them. I've slid Dublin back to 1 place to 3rd. I didn't expect I'd do this, but something isn't clicking, and Jerry, I kind of dismissed you last week when you suggested it. I did. I'm putting my hands up now. I'm not saying I'm infallible the way Owen used to say it.
Apology accepted.
The one thing that got me at the weekend was looking at the confidence of the Clare forwards and the manner in which they strutted around Croker. They sold dummies at ease. They were kicking balls over the bar, no bother. And I was like, there's no fear here.
No.
Teams don't fear Dublin anymore.
Until the last 10 minutes.
I don't know. Yeah, Shane, maybe. And there were 6 points up, and it wasn't the same as the manner in which Kildare caught them. Like Dublin really turned it on, and even Dublin's final score was so impressive, even though a lot of people would say, and the Sunday game unfortunately didn't show the highlights, or the moment where the free went against Clare, but Clare FM commentators lost the head that it should have been a free in, and Dublin break at lightning speed, and they just know what they're doing in that moment.
Oh, the Dubs getting big refereeing decisions in Croke Park. Jesus, that never happens.
Hey, did you hear that the stats were 10-1 in the last 10 minutes? The free count, 10-1
in favour of Dublin.
In favour of Dublin.
Wow,
that's what I heard from the Clare FM commentary team, because I was watching the Mayo game. But anyways, yeah, the Dubs, we'll see it now on Saturday night. Now, in Beg, you'd expect that the likes of Costello, McCaffrey, Scully will start, but there's just that element of fear has gone, and once that goes, that invincibility goes, and cracks.
I'm not like, they've won 4 games from 4. Like, you know, this whole Dublin are gone shite.
Let's get to the end.
Go on.
Galway are first place, and I think Pork Joyce will be really happy. And
sorry,
I actually think
our podcast listeners, Galway are second. Carry yourself first.
Second. Sorry, apologies. Thank you. And Shane, I actually think it's you can say that when it's in Division 1. When it's in Division 2, you can't say that Dublin, if they're in second place, are happy enough with winning those games. Maybe they are. Maybe they're training, like as I suggested 2 weeks ago. Maybe their training regime is that savage. I just think that there's too much not right there to be able to justify them in second place. But for Joyce, leaders are stepping up. Matty Tierney 2 weeks in a row has put in exceptional performances, and Peter Cook and Ian Burke have slid in seamlessly. So they're doing that without the star boys being back.
I haven't said this on air. Sean Kelly, Player of the Year, 66-1 if you want.
You've called it, Jer.
And this is on the basis of listening to the football pod. So it's credit where you guys, but it was like, that's how this works. If they're going to win, obviously, Shane Walsh, congratulations, getting engaged, and so he will obviously be their star man in those finals if they are to get over the line. But Footballer of the Year, they're going to remember this, that in the league he was grinding it out and driving forward and is transforming the role of the full-back. You know, he's not a stopper, he's a starter. And so on and so forth. And so my campaign starts here. I've got a good track record of getting you in the top 3.
Yeah, you absolutely do. You've been very, very close a couple of times. But I think that Sean Kelly role is a really interesting one. Andy Moran is someone who would have tipped me off to it initially on season 1 of the football pod, because obviously the Mayo and Galway boys, they know each other so well. And I didn't get it. I was like, how could their most important player be a cornerback in 2021? I just didn't get it, like. And this is when we hadn't really seen teams for a long time. It was that summer when we got 3 league games after COVID, and he was raving about Sean Kelly, and I didn't know Andy that well at the time, so part of me was going, he's this is like the Kerry boys in Cork, he's just kind of talking up Galway here. But he was speaking about the fulcrum of Galway's attacking game plan being based on Sean Kelly, and now they've developed beyond that. But if they can release Kelly a little bit, and we've seen snippets of it in the league, but if they can release him in the summer to go forward without having to tie up the best player of the other team, it's similar to what Mayo are getting from like Enda Hessian or other players.
He
like
needs
that.
a rest, doesn't he? Like, is it Sean Kelly that's played every final he could have possibly played in the last 12 months? He hasn't got a rest either. He's straight into the league. Like, you'd be concerned about his...
Or like the training to games ratio that we always hear about, which is, you know, if you play more soccer matches like at a local level than you do training sessions, and inter-county you never get games, and he's like, I got games, hooray, I don't have to do all this ridiculous training. This has Gary Neville saying teams don't fear Messi anymore after the Saudi Arabia game. Vibes off it, says one of our colleagues who knows a thing or two about inter-county football there, Tommy. That's about the Dubs.
Okay, yeah, well, maybe that is a bit of PTSD, and I'm not going to say who it was, but PTSD in Leinster, and like Leinster counties have gone soft, like they've gone soft, and they are absolutely browbeaten by the Dubs.
I agree. So,
like, one of the things we were saying last night in the pod were the Dubs have Derry this weekend, and that is going to be their only test until the All-Ireland semi-final. And I know we say that every year, but they're actually going to have to play 8 games to get there, the way the calendar works.
Well, hang on. Is there not a possibility that there'll be an important match at some point away from Croke Park in the round robin? I haven't... What, like, is the draw...
The way it falls, right? So Dublin are going to be first seeds. They're going to win Leinster. More than likely. They're going to be first seeds. They're going to get a provincial runner-up So, like, take your pick who you're going to get there.
Cork.
Cork
Sligo.
Cork are probably the Ulster team, I think, at the way it's fallen this year. I'm not sure exactly how it's fallen. Then you're going to get a decent Division 1 team, and then you're going to get probably a Division 2 or a Westmeath. So the Dubs aren't going to get challenged again. They're going to have a Division 4 team in the quarterfinal in Leinster, Division 2 or 3 team in Leinster after that. And then in the round robin series, 3 games. One of them, you'd imagine they're going to walk. Another one, they'll get by. And then they might have a game that they have to pick a team for. So, look, I just think that the challenge is going to be there for them over the next couple of weeks.
So the training argument still holds water. I do think though that look, you know, if they're training really hard, then that's why there was a great line that Babs Keaton had about Tipperary after a championship match. They were dead only to wash them. And that's what the Dubs look like a little bit at the moment. But if they are doing a block of training that allows them to be explosive in 8 weeks' time or 10 weeks' time, and then Con looks like Con again, because what's happening at the moment is he's just doing hard yards, making sure the hamstrings are ready to go whenever they actually extend them. And it's the same with a load of those players. They just aren't in form at the moment, and there's no new players coming through to supplant them. Michael Darmacauli's in the papers today saying he wants kids to come in and rip the jersey off. He was talking specifically about himself at Ballyboden. He wants the 18-year-olds to do that, but he wants them to do that at Dublin training as well. There's no, where's the next Con? Where's the next Scully? Where's the next Bugler? Do you know, like, there's just nothing at the moment.
That's because even John Kiley was saying after the Limericks won the weekend, he was like, you need to have most of your work done by this stage in terms of training and prep. Like, most of the work is behind you. But so if that's the case with Dublin, then you'd be worried.
Well, that wasn't the case with Limerick last year, though, was it?
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Teams change year on year. They're like, well, that didn't work. Well, clearly it worked for Limerick last year.
So I think Tommy's point about the concertinaed season means that we don't actually know what everybody's doing at this point and just how far along they are.
Yeah,
but
I think that's fair, yeah.
But you would definitely, if you're Mayo, you're feeling good about the vibes is actually as important. The smiley faces, the emojis, as we were talking about.
The mood music, lads. Like, we were in Castlebar for our roadshow last summer, and it was like, it was awkward. Like, it was like, oh God, this is like, how has this gotten so?
Do you know what, Tommy? We need to
Saturday night,
to announce the tickets today that we're going back to Castlebar, and they will sell out. We'll sell out the biggest arena that they have.
No, Paddy's made it clear he's not going anywhere but Killarney this year, so that's the way he's going.
Vibes are a little bit off there as well. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's what the All Ireland needs. The football pod to go in and shake up Killarney.
I do also need to officially apologise on air to the glorious skyline of Tralee. It's funny how my initial tweet got
I missed this.
250,000 likes or 250,000 reach, and then the next one where I apologised for my stupidity.
What did you say?
I was like, the skyline from the stand in Killarney is world class, and everybody's like, duh, it's Tralee. I'm like, oh my God.
That's unfortunate. Like, it is tough to call.
Luckily Twitter's fucked and no one can see it anymore. Apologies for the language.
Well, I just liked it. Any other big issues? I'm sorry.
No, we don't have time.
I was getting angry texts.
You stretched it out so long. We don't have time to get into it.
Okay, well, next time I won't make that many changes, and you can just argue with me.
I mean, this is a week. I think it's let the public decide. Should we do this every week?
100%.
I think so.
I'm getting texted, man, and
you don't have to do that much work on it anymore, Tommy.
Tommy.
The work is done. You're just defending your bad takes now. Anyway.
Okay, all right, okay.
Hey, there you go. He twisted his arm. That's brilliant. Tommy, excellent. A natural successor. Thank you very much.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
And that was the latest football power rankings from Tommy Rooney.
Tommy knows his football, obviously. Listen to football pod the odd time.
And I was looking at the power rankings and I thought that Jesus Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
Right. It's 23 minutes past 8. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Some people think we're on mushrooms when we're talking about the stats and the analysis, but that's not the case. Derek McNamara is here with us to introduce some sense to proceedings, some facts.
Yeah, facts. Who's saying that?
And it's the clip.
Right. Sorry about that.
It was a Kildare Gaelic football pod who it turns out were tempting fate horribly, but we'll get to them later on in the season. Anyway.
Yeah, good weekend. Well, the English Welsh game is a bit dour, wasn't it? But apart from that, the games were pretty great.
I got stopped the other day by a man who works in analytics and says this is the best analytics slot in any sport that he's heard. And at the same time, one of my mates was like, that's bullshit. I can't believe you're doing that.
Yeah. So it's so funny because I was going to say this, but my mom rang me there last week and she was like, no, I didn't like last week's one. It's too technical. I was like, all right. Thanks, which is fair enough. You know, good feedback. You know, bad feedback. And I suppose, look, that is exactly what my job is, right? Like it's trying to make the game digestible and understandable. Whether you're, my mom's only 29, obviously, but if you're at that age, and then also you've also got the people that are heavily involved in this sport, the guys that are the coaches, the analysts, the old guard, the people who've been there for forever, who would look at this stuff and say, it's not for me. It's too data driven. But I suppose it's my job to try and to help and improve and help those guys understand that, look, there's too much happening in the game for one person to look at the game. And I suppose the other side of it is that the coaches that are at the top, they are able to do this to a certain extent, but they don't have any ammunition that we can bring to those coaches, to those people involved in these teams, to help them understand, okay, well, we can now measure something in a way that we've never measured something before, so that we can actually make small improvements in our team, whether you're at the top of the league or you're at the bottom of the league.
All sports have gone through this revolution over the last decade and a half. You worked for PFF for a while. In American football, this happened, and there's like I don't need those stats, thanks very much. I'm an old school coach. I can shout at my players and inspire them to greatness, and I know everything with my eyes. It passes the eye test. And in football, it's fairly similar. There's like a massive analytics movement. We've seen it reach certain points where it's now influencing increasingly player signings, and some clubs are using it really well, other clubs are not using it really well, and I guess rugby is catching up with those sports.
I don't know whether it has started that movement yet, and which is really exciting for us because we're kind of at the start, but there is rugby is still very much in the dark ages when it comes to a lot of things, and data and analytics would be one of them, but also the idea around people coming in that haven't played before or haven't played at the highest level.
People are suspicious of that.
Very much so. Yeah. Like the vast majority of people, and which is fair enough, right? Because that's all they've known, right? But at the same time, there are literally thousands, if not millions, of people out there who didn't have the skills or the expertise or the background, or didn't go to the right rugby school, or didn't get coaching when they're younger, or got injured or got concussions. There's all these, there's more of them than there is the guys that were there. And somebody like myself who does look at the game differently to most people, but I went and I did my crap jobs where I did these crap jobs after leaving school or going to college, university. I learned these lessons and these skills that players could never have learned. They could never done the skills of learning Excel and learning development and software and analytics and data. There's no way that you could have done both. So the point is that the rugby community needs to understand that these things are going to come into the sport no matter what.
Yeah, and it turns out that there are people within the rugby community who are happy to be in the vanguard of this and are leaning on your expertise and taking advantage of it.
Absolutely, but like the point is that we're not coming to try and push anybody out of the way or change anything for the negative. This analysis, this data, this information is purely to help the sport improve. That's the only reason it exists, is to help players, help coaches, help analysts, help the people that are making decisions, so that they can measure what the impact is that they have on the game.
Was there a tangible time in which rugby started to embrace analysis and data? Like, was the dawn of the professional era? Was it even more recently than that, when teams and nations were like, well, this
I'm
actually makes
sure
sense?
there'd be a lot of people that'll turn around and say, "Oh, Derek, you're full of shit," right now. But like the vast majority of coaches, nearly all the coaches that I would know, very few of them are making decisions based on data-driven analysis.
Right.
The majority of analysts that are in the teams would be based around creating video clips that would enhance the chances of a coach understanding. So they're not really making, because the way in which data has been absorbed, calculated or enhanced and then provided back to teams is still very much in its infancy. You're still using Excel, you're still using there's no one real analysis platform where you can go in and interact with data in a way that you can make decisions, then that's exactly what we're doing. You know, it's we're taking, and I hear this a lot where, you know, analysts would be like, oh, you know, that could take my job, you know, this data. And it's like like the introduction of I think one of my friends was saying, you know, the introduction of the plough and then, you know, a combine harvester. The idea of that taking a job is, it's not the same. It's like, just, you can do more. You can actually have more impact.
Frees up time for other things.
Yeah, oh, hugely. Like we're doing the grunt work. And what that allows, what our analysis allows these teams to do is spend so much more time coaching, because like that's fundamentally what all these guys want to do. But like what we also try to do as well is we try to help with different people who have different learning ways of learning. So like I personally have dyslexia, right? So I learn by visually seeing things. I like giving me a paragraph of words. I really struggle with it. But then people understand by listening. So we'll have information around what the data means by allowing people to learn from listening. But we'll also have the data. We'll also have the graphs. We'll also have, so that's what we're trying to just do, is trying to cater for all these different types of learning, because people that are involved in sport tend to not be the people that read a lot because they have the skills and they have their expertise by using their hands and their head. So there's so much going on, and I'm hoping that we're kind of like, we're not the start of it, because there's always going to be other companies out there that have started this, but we're trying to bring everything together to try and make that next step and help those teams improve.
Okay, so that's the culture war that's raging within the sport at the moment. Let's distill it down to this week. We've I mean, obviously it's Irish rugby, so there's a 10 debate and a fascination / preoccupation /
spent the last
worry
3 days putting this together for you. I hope you like it.
So
so
it's actually worked out perfectly in terms of the ability to compare Sexton and Ross Byrne. They've basically played the same amount of time.
Yeah, so I guess this first slide that we're going to put up for people that aren't that are listening, we basically compared Sexton to Ross Byrne just from the Six Nations. And when we looked at this first slide is kind of like what is. This is the first kind of analysis that is currently provided by providers out there. And in it we show that both players played, Sexton has played 116 minutes and Ross Byrne has played 121, so very, very close level of analysis that we can do a comparison against. When we boil that down to actual game minutes, so time of ball in play, Sexton's at 56 and Byrne is at 57. And then the number of possessions. So this is the number of times that both players have actually touched the ball. And Sexton only has 52 with Byrne 66. So there's a little bit of discrepancy. So Byrne's getting more involved in the game. And that could be because he's coming on as a substitute. You know, at the end of the game, he's more involved in the game. But that's probably why. So that's kind of our starting point. You know, how many possessions did they have? How much time did they spend on the pitch? And then when we look at what actually the output of those possessions, so what actually happened by each player, we look at their passing roughly around the same. So 77% of the time they're passing the ball. So once they get the ball, they pass it. Sexton kicks the ball 13% and Byrne kicks 21%. So Byrne kicks reasonably bigger amount of ball, and Sexton carries the ball into contact a little bit more. So that's just from a higher, very high level. This is what the two players do. This is what they do when they get the ball, and this is the current state of which analysis exists.
Okay, that's the type of stuff you're getting on your TV coverage.
Yeah.
The next layer down.
Yeah. So then basically what we do is we take all the information from the games, okay, and we say, okay, well, who's the best? And when we look at the passing grade, so we want to just primarily look at the passing, for instance. Sexton comes out as number 1 in passing, and that's because he's the most accurate.
Number 1 in the tournament.
In the tournament, yeah.
So this isn't just versus number 1 versus Ross Byrne, it's versus all the other out halves.
Correct. Yeah, I think there was 13 10s altogether. That, you know, we have a minimum threshold of inputs that players need to have. But of these, Sexton comes out, and you know, if 77% of what they do when they get the ball is passing, that's the thing we want to look at primarily. And when Ross Byrne, we take the same amount of information, Ross Byrne comes out at third. He's very close to fourth, but the difference between first and third is substantial. Okay, so we're looking at pass left, pass right, accuracy, speed, distance, discrepancies between those three. So there's literally 20 or 30 different aspects that we take into consideration when we look at this passing grade.
Okay, so that's the first one there. The passing accuracy is next.
Yeah, so Sexton has a passing accuracy of...
He's number 1 and Ross Byrne's number 6.
Yeah, so we basically grade each pass out of 5, 1 to 5. And Sexton's passing grade is a 4.4, so it's nearly perfect, like basically. And that's the ability to make a pass and hit the player that's coming onto the ball right in front of their hands. Okay, so that's basically the passes out in front. Anything that's a little bit high or low, we give a 4. Anything that's above the head or below the waist is a 3, and 2 is a ball that goes to the ground, and 1 is a turnover. So Sexton's right up there with the 4.4 of accuracy, but Ross Byrne is at a 4.1, which is average. It's right there, ballpark average when it comes to passing as a 10. And what that affects is that kind of affects everything else in Byrne's arsenal, if you want to call it that, because that's what brings him down. That's what he would need. If I was coaching, if I was working with Ross, I'd be saying, you need to learn how far you pass the ball, which is the next one that we're looking at.
Average pass distance.
Yeah, and the Irish guys are much smaller passing distance than the average. So the average is around a 5.7 metre pass. Ross Byrne is at a 4.5 metre pass, and Sexton's at a 4.8. So like the idea here is that we can identify what they're doing, when they're doing it, why they're doing it, and then we can identify how well they're doing these activities.
Okay, so the average pass distance, Ireland being 11th and 12th, would suggest that that's by design.
Yeah. So we wouldn't weight that heavily towards the grade.
Okay.
So, but it is part of the actual overall grade. We do take it into consideration.
Okay, and the first receiver depth is the last one on the passing stats here.
Yeah.
Sexton's 3 and Ross Byrne's 1.
Yeah. So from the distance, so the average depth of receiver for a 10 is 5.7 metres from the game line. Ross Byrne is hitting that game line at a 4.5 and Sexton at 4.8. So that's, we've heard this quite a lot, that he's able to take the ball to the line quite a lot, which is true to a certain extent. But, what we'll do, we might go into in a second, is it only kind of tells half the story. So that receiver depth, he's doing what he's been asked to do, so he's getting up to the line. The only problem is that he's not coming onto the ball. He can be quite stationary when he gets the ball, compared to Sexton, who also runs onto the ball and is flat and is taking on the receiver or the defenders.
So these are subtle enough differences, but quite fundamental when it comes to the output.
Yeah, and then so basically the next slide then is basically we kind of pulling all that together. And basically what we're saying here is that this is kind of an overall what both players are doing. So we showed the output to begin with when they get the ball, but this is just showing, where each player is doing what they're doing, the skill sets on top. But from a quality, so from what their actual players are doing, carrying is another one that Johnny is, he's significantly better than what Ross is doing, as well as the passing. So these two areas are the two main areas as to why it's a significant difference between the two, and how whether or not we can put that affects the team as much when it's put in I think we had only 7 of the starting players start last weekend, and we were still able to implement the same game plan. Whether or not these two areas can significantly
influence the outcome,
is the next question. And
okay.
I would say that they don't. I would say that we have enough players and leaders in that team to negate this problem.
Okay, and if you're, it's funny, just when you were talking about the passing and the importance of it, when Joe Schmidt came into Leinster, Brian just told the story that Schmidt said he wants to make Leinster the best passing team in Europe.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like, what's the big deal about that? But actually, if you think about it, the difference between the accurate pass and the difference between a 5 and a 4 is that the speed. You've seen the speed of hands that Ireland have at the moment, where the ball can, like, everybody looks a little bit like Finn Russell at times, and the difference that makes is that suddenly there's a gap where there wasn't one, and so the speed of passing and the accuracy of the passing has a knock-on impact on your ability to implement your game plan.
Massive. And so fixing a player is something huge, and it's so basically fixing a player is the ability to get the ball and take a step and fix that player on you as a defending player. That's what a 5 grade pass is where the ball is able to hit the when you pass the ball to a player, it hits the player and the player is able to then fix the player either left or right.
France scored a try at the weekend where Ntamack just took the ball and ran straight, and kept looking straight and passed the ball without looking away, and you're like, oh Jesus, that's pretty impressive.
And that's exactly what we look at. And Jimmy O'Brien did it as well against South Africa, where he got the ball running into 22 and fixed the player and put the pass out into the corner to set up the try. It seems quite small, but we've been looking at it and grading it since we started.
This might sound like a stupid question, Derek, but on that first graph you had, so Ross Byrne opted to kick 21% of the time versus 13% Sexton, and Sexton obviously carries the ball a lot more than Ross. Does that, and this is maybe a bit of fear in this question, does that make Johnny Sexton more liable, more prone to injury because he's carrying the ball a lot more into tackles than Ross Byrne?
That's funny you say that, because we also look at the amount of times a player's first or second receiver. So basically, where I looked at this yesterday, so there wasn't too much of a discrepancy between the two, but I'm trying to find it here. Sorry, no, it's not good radio. But basically, there was a little bit of discrepancy. Yeah, so here it is. So there's around a 5% discrepancy between Sexton being first or second receiver. So where Sexton is being protected is that he's behind the first receiver at that pod, that forwards pod. So that's the way you're protecting him. But most definitely, the reason why Johnny's such a good player is that he's able to fix those defenders. He's able to bring the ball to the line and, have a late hit on or a tackle without the ball, we call it. And he would have the most with those where he gets tackled off the ball. But the idea is that, that's part of the game. You're gonna have to be able to
stand in the pocket.
Yeah. Stand in the pocket.
Ships and hits. Yeah.
So the last slide that we have is just so when we take all that information. So for just tens, we look at I think I counted them before I came on. We had 91 separate grades that we grade specifically. We then weight them accordingly based on their skill set. So here we have production is basically who has the most amount of activity in the Six Nations so far. We don't have the Wales-England game or the Scotland-France game in here just yet. But basically we split them by carrying, tackling, passing, kicking and turnovers for the tens.
So before the Scotland game at the weekend, Finn Russell was number 1?
Yeah, just about with Sexton behind him. But I would imagine this would switch based on this weekend's games.
Finn Russell was pretty good to the eye.
He is the eye, but I think I
player of the tournament in the London Times this morning.
People get bamboozled by sex appeal and throwing passes, but I mentioned this last week. I was like, just watch out for that skip pass. That's how you get him, and that was the game there last weekend. That skip pass he gave was the intercept, I think.
Yeah.
So like there's. And these guys would have been playing against Finn Russell every week, so they would have known his strengths and weaknesses. So I don't know. I'd be sleeping on Finn Russell, but I've been saying this for years. He's very, very hit and miss, and like he's a great, brilliant, amazing player. Don't get me wrong.
Notwithstanding that, like he's neck and neck with Sexton after the same, because obviously Sexton didn't play at the weekend either. So
because in this analysis he had 2 really good games, but his underlying issue has always been consistency and always not falling off the game. And when we'll have this game done by next week and we can come back to this and I can show you these numbers again, I would imagine he probably goes down to second or third after this weekend's game.
Okay, so just
come back to Sexton and come back to Byrne. So when we take all those 96 small bits of information and we weight them in a particular way, and we look at all the information. Although Sexton and Byrne were quite close to each other in the passing, Byrne skips down to overall 6th.
And in the graph, the previous one actually, they looked so on there's tiny little bits in the graph, but actually every point. So there's the graph. The bottom part of the graph is back up on the screen there. It's actually significant. If there's any divergence, it's massively significant because it makes up, as you're saying, 60 odd data points.
Yes. No, it takes up there's 93 data points, but behind that there's probably 50,000 points of input.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? We're talking about literally.
So if there's a small divergence on the graph, that's actually very significant.
Yeah. So we're talking about,
and that's why we have
bits of activity. So
and that's why we have the final one there, where. So just to read it out: Finn Russell's 1, Sexton's 2, Tommaso Allen's 3, Ntamack is 4, Garbisi's 5, and then Ross Byrne is 6. Sexton scores 70, and Ross Byrne's is 64.5. So there's a 5.5 point difference there, and as you're pointing out, that represents a significant difference in quality.
Yeah. Now this is only over 2 games, and you could say that, but I think the way in which we analyse games, the way in which we enhance the data, enrich the data, and then create this kind of an output. We're taking literally hundreds, if not thousands, of bits of information, calculating them and putting them into these buckets, and then what we do is we weight them based on what each position is doing. So if we were to look at all the players in the Six Nations, we would weight obviously second row much more heavily towards carrying, rucking and tackling than we would to passing, which is what a 10 and a 9 do.
So Sexton is clearly still our number 1, but Ross Byrne, the fall off is significant, but not as pronounced as we might have feared in the past.
Correct.
Right. So, and we can somewhat overcome any of the issues at the moment, given the strength of the team.
And if we were talking to Ross, we would be, a small thing that we can try and work on is just making those smaller, because again, we're only talking about a 4 or 5 metre pass. We want to make sure that pass is hitting right in front of the player, and looking at Sexton to emulate or help him identify where those passes.
You're like a modern day Alan Turing, breaking the enigma code of the Six Nations. I love this. But there's so many possibilities and eventualities that it distills it quite nicely into.
Yeah, no.
Why?
And my mother really, Sheila McNamara, I know she'd be scarlet now, she will, but that did make, if we can help somebody like my mom digest this information, then we can get to the coaches, we can get to the analysts, we can get to the people running these organisations, because they think they know, but they don't know, if that makes sense. And this data will help them digest it and go, all right, okay, this makes more sense.
And just not going to sell it to France or South Africa or Scotland until after the World Cup.
Sure.
Tentative yes there,
yeah.
I didn't hear that. Derek, good stuff.
Yeah,
what are we going to do next week?
I don't know. I suppose we could probably just take a quick look at all the teams if you wanted to, or I suppose if people want to leave comments in the YouTube where they want to know something very specific, but we could probably look at each individual team and maybe see what lies ahead for the last 2 games.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. reactrugby.com.
Yeah, and we also loaded a whole load of game analysis from the different teams as well. So there's Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all the Six Nations games. We've a bunch of all the Ottoman International games online, so you can go in and see your best players and what they can do and what their analysis looks like.
All right. Here is some James Ryan speaking with Joe on the show last night about the win in Rome. Colm Milani's up next.
Yeah, well, the last try was brilliant for us. Like, it was one of the best team tries I think we've had. But to be honest, I thought we were a bit unlucky to be going in at half time 24-17 up. I thought we'd left a couple of scores out there. Obviously, they got that intercept, and all of a sudden the game felt very close, 24-20. But I think what it put it down to is probably just some of the messages at half time. What we said was, the game was close, but we want to be tested. You know what I mean? This is where we want to be. So some of the messages at half time were very much just stick to our process, stick to our game, because we felt certainly when we had the ball, that we were putting them under a lot of pressure, and it was just a very final piece, whether that was a disled try, a knock on, that we were just letting them off the hook. But we just said, look, if we could hold on to the ball, stick to our game, build pressure, then we felt like we could, if we kept turning the rock, then we'd eventually break them. So obviously, that's the way. It was very tough, but that's the way it turned out in the end. We managed to build a bit of a score. So I think just sticking to our game and keep believing that our attack would eventually wear them down.
That's James Ryan speaking with Joe Malloy last night. We played the full thing at around about 9:30 this morning. It was really interesting. There is definitely a part of me that wonders though about when does your process involve adapting to the exact circumstances of the moment? We might start talking about that, because you can be very stuck to the process, and then sometimes you just need to kick the points. And he was defending the decision not to kick the points on the basis of the outcome. Well, we're not outcome driven, we're process driven. It's like, that's fair enough, but when does your process take account of the fact that kicking the points is actually the right thing to do, in like for an emotional reason, for a psychological reason, for, do you know what I mean?
But again, hindsight, like if you get kicked for touch and you get the try, it's like, well, yeah, there you go, decision vindicated. But it's easy to criticise him after the fact. Well,
I mean, it was the ITV crew, and Byrne just was bringing this up, who has been in that situation and knows exactly what the circumstances are. Of course it's easy, but sure, that's all the analysis is post fact. I do wonder though if your process doesn't allow for taking the emotional temperature of a game.
Yeah, but then what I wonder is, would Sexton have made a different decision? Like, were these team calls generally? Are they generally team calls? Well, sometimes the captain can obviously make the. He
said that it's a three-way conversation. Henderson, who was calling the line out, and Ross Byrne, the first one they said wasn't a gimme, so they were like, well, let's just do the line out. And here's the thing, kicking for the corner the whole time against New Zealand really worked. It's just that it's different in the Six Nations, because you've got your bonus points. By half-time, the bonus point, it didn't matter if you won by 1 point or 1,000 points, really. Like, we're winning games at the moment, and so therefore the scoring difference isn't important at the moment. Maybe it will be, and they didn't know what the result was going to be in the Scotland game at that stage. So,
and you could see Andy Farrell at the end of the game keep going, keep playing, keep the ball in play.
I think that's totally right as well. At that stage, like, the game's over, you've won the game, you're not going to lose it. You are still trying to, but you're more likely to break them and more likely to get more opportunity. Anyway, just a talking point for sure. And you can hear James Ryan give a much better answer about, like, well, we did what we wanted to do, and it all worked out for us. Carl is here. Carl Maloney, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How's it going?
What is going on?
Well, plenty going on. FA Cup action tonight. Nigel Pearson has been speaking, manager of Bristol City. Forgot about Nigel.
Haven't talked about him in a while.
He fought wolves in the mountains one time, didn't he?
Yeah, he's
like, literally, it was bare hands. He
back.
Did he? There was a wolf pack that he was up walking in the Carpathian Mountains, I want to say, somewhere in Romania, pre-season, and he came back with. No, I don't know. Does everybody?
Any witnesses to this?
I don't know. Sure, who? Like, I'd believe it. I mean, I would back him in a. Jeez. Not many football managers you'd back in a fight against a howling pack of wolves.
I would back him, definitely.
Pearson and Habib fighting wild animals.
Yeah, interesting.
Unless this was a story made up by the Fiver to show how savage he is, and it didn't actually happen. I don't know. I'll do a quick bit of googling there while you talk amongst yourselves.
I actually was listening to his interviews and press conference before tonight's game. They're going really well, actually, Bristol City, but they play Manchester City tonight in the 5th round, so it's a big ask for them. Fulham against Leeds, Leicester versus Blackburn, and Stoke against Brighton, the other games tonight in the FA Cup. Chidozie Ogbene on the mark for Rotherham last night in the Championship. He scored the equaliser in their 1-1 draw with Swansea. Ryan Manning provided the assist there for the Swansea goal. There's a couple of games tonight. Millwall travel to Luton and Coventry take on Preston. Interesting finish actually for Ogbene's goal last night, where he slides in, kind of gets control and then nudges it past the keeper.
It looked scrappy, but it was actually a better finish than it maybe looked
I think
at
so.
first.
There was quite a bit of control attached to it. Another award for Lionel Messi last night. He won the Men's Player of the Year at the Best FIFA Awards. He says it caps off a tremendous year for him after his World Cup success. He beat off Kylian Mbappe and Karim Benzema to land that award at the ceremony last night in Paris. Lionel Scaloni was the Men's Coach of the Year after that Argentina success. England's Serena Wiegman honoured with the Women's Coach of the Year award after their success at the Euros last summer, and the Women's Player of the Year was Spain's Alexia Putellas. So that was at the awards last night in Paris.
Max O'Leary, I think. Is Max O'Leary the Republic of Ireland keeper in goals for Bristol City tonight against Man City? So nice easy task for him. Nigel Pearson strikes me as one of the football managers that would cope quite well in GAA. Do you think? I think of soccer managers over in England who would be really good GAA managers. Nigel Pearson strikes me as like a Talton Cup winning manager, just someone who would get the most out of an inter-county GAA team. Do you know, there's some managers you're like, nah, they wouldn't work.
He's the English Banty, is that what you're saying?
Possibly fighting wolves in the woods of Clonus, maybe. He just strikes me as that character. Do you know, one of the lads who you'd run through a wall like
kind
a Davy Burke.
He'd strike me as kind of old school.
Like Neil Warnock managing a Division 4 team, it works in my head. Do you know? Whereas Eric Ten Hag is too crisp for that. Like,
you think
he's not made for the G? He's not a Davy Burke or a Davy Fitz. Do you know? There's just some managers that would fit the bill, some wouldn't. So
yeah, I wonder would there be a chance for any crossover? We've seen kind of performance coaches come in from different sports.
Yeah,
I wonder.
There was 5 of them. What they do is that one goes for you and the others circle around until one of them can bring you down. What they essentially do is rip the throat out. This is Pearson describing the incident himself. He said he initially threw himself into a patch of brambles hoping they would leave him alone, but then defended himself by using his walking poles and brute strength, but didn't go into details. The story had grown legs to the point where Stuart Pearce tells Peter Crouch that he gouged one of their eyes out.
Oh, lads.
And broke one of their jaws with his fists.
Was brute strength Nigel Pearson's own words, I wonder?
Wait, so this actually happened?
Well, certainly that seems to be a story that is doing the rounds, yeah.
Liam Neeson was in the film, wasn't he, where he fought off a load of wolves in the forest?
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
There's some, I can't remember the name of the movie, but Liam Neeson was definitely the lead.
Wolves are big, like, aren't they?
They're fairly big.
Yeah.
And he managed Leicester, didn't he, the Foxes?
Yeah, guys, one of their eyes out, it says here. In
Manchester
Transylvania.
City, Grey, no problem then.
The Grey was the film with Liam Neeson. So watch The Grey and then just imagine Nigel Pearson in the same role. It will make you more impressed with what he's achieved there. 5 wolves, that's no easy task, lads. I've never done it myself, but that's like a Vladimir Putin kind of thing, isn't it? Tops off in the forest fighting animals.
Right.
Fantastic. That's Nigel Pearson. Glad that we got to
anything else?
I was expecting that this morning.
Well, there was an interesting cricket match this morning. The New Zealand cricketers won the second test against England by just 1 run to tie the series 1-1. That's only the second time in test history a team has won by such a margin. So very fine margins there, but New Zealand got the job done.
All right, good stuff. Thanks a million for that call. More from Call Across the Day, of course, on News Talk. And if you want to get in touch this morning, you can get us at Off the Ball AM is the Twitter handle, or of course you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream as well. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now let's turn our attention to Celtic versus Rangers at the weekend in the Scottish League Cup. I'm delighted to say Tom English is with us. Tom, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well.
Before we get into the football, maybe we'll just talk a little bit about the rugby and this rising anxiety that we suddenly have in Ireland about we were just penciling in a World Cup quarter-final automatically, but now all of a sudden Scotland are good again.
What are you getting anxious about though?
Well,
I mean, Ireland are invincible.
See, that's the thing. History teaches us that that's not actually true.
But listen, never mind history. This team... cliche, creating new history. No, relax, Ger. All is fine. All is fine. I think Scotland will put it up to Ireland, definitely. But Ireland are much further down the road as a team than Scotland are. Although Scotland have made big strides in the Six Nations, even on Sunday when they lost from 19-0 down. They made a hell of a game of it. Scored 3 tries. Could have scored another 3, lost the line out on French 5-metre line early on in the game. Xander Ferguson dropped the ball going over the line. Jamie Ritchie threw a lousy pass to Duan van der Merwe out in the right wing. If he thrown it a little bit ahead of him, he'd have scored. Nobody stops Duan van der Merwe from that range. So a lot of what might have been. But I think Ireland, and some heavy hitters coming back for Ireland as well by the looks of it. So it's Grand Slam ahoy, boys. Don't worry about it.
Well, it's also the World Cup that I'm concerned about where...
You're very concerned man.
Well,
chill out.
4 years ago, we were terrible and Scotland completely did not show up in that game.
Yes,
and that's kind of the level of flakiness that we're used to when it comes to, with the odd exception, when the bus was late that time, obviously, Scotland scored 2 early tries and Joe Schmidt's year was ruined. And then there was the game in Croke Park. But other than that, we've basically handled our business. And now we have to take them seriously.
And I think Andy Farrell will definitely take this Scotland team seriously. Because, they're scoring a lot of tries. And I think Scotland will score tries against Ireland. As good as Ireland's defence is, I think Scotland will score tries. But Ireland are so relentless now and so powerful. And I think power will probably win the day in Edinburgh. But, the place will be heaving. Massive crowd. You never know. But I think Ireland are just too professional and got too many weapons to lose. But they'd want to be on their mettle on the day. That's all I'll say. They'd want to be very good on the day to win. What's
the mood music, Tom, around the Scottish fans and players and management? Like, is it a massive air of positivity? Someone was saying this morning they haven't won a Triple Crown since 1990, so they've clearly come on leaps and bounds.
Yeah, they have. I would say a cautious optimism. When you've been beaten down as much as these Scotland supporters have over 20 plus years, they've nothing. Well, if you include Edinburgh and Glasgow, they've won one trophy since 1999. That's a whole lot of disappointment, right? And disappointment is kind of bred into the Scotland rugby fans. So nobody's getting carried away. They're enjoying what they're seeing. They're enjoying a very ambitious rugby team playing excellent rugby, in a world where it's all about physicality and intensity and attrition and all this kind of buzzwords. Scotland play a fantastic style of rugby. Spearheaded obviously by Finn Russell, but they've added Sione Tuipulotu to the midfield, who's made a big difference. Hugh Jones has come back into it after quite a few years out off the scene. Excellent, playing excellently. They are a good team, Scotland. I think the Scotland rugby fans are certainly enjoying winning the first two games in the championship since 1996, and probably enjoyed actually what they found from early on in Paris after being 19-0 down. And you could have said, I watched the game again yesterday, they actually probably should have won the game. When you look at the chances that they had, they made a couple of bad handling errors at the wrong time, and France were just too good and exploited them.
Townsend's supposed to be leaving at the end of the World Cup. Is that a done deal, do you think?
No, it's not, no. I had assumed that he would leave, that he would have had enough. I'm hearing now that he'd probably prefer to stay.
Right.
But there's a bit of shadow boxing going on. I think the SRU, for fear that he might get a juicy offer elsewhere, are looking around to see if there's an option for them in case he does walk. But I think at the end of this Six Nations, if Townsend wants to stay, I think they'll probably renew his contract.
It seems to make sense in a way as well, that there's been a steady period of building, getting depth. A lot of injuries have cleared up. He's made peace with his best player, and it feels like there's just a maturity about the team and the setup now.
Yeah, there does. Yeah. Now they'll need to keep this going until the end of the Six Nations. They'll need to play well against Ireland and obviously put Italy away in the last game. I think if that happens, then that will be that'll be a full championship of decent performances, decent results, and I think that would be enough. I think it would be bonkers, to be honest, if Townsend wants to stay. And as you say, for those reasons, Jerry, he has improved the squad. His relationships with Finn Russell have never been better. I think it would be kind of dynamiting your own progress if they were to get rid of him now. I just don't think it would make any sense at all.
Let's move on and talk about Celtic and Rangers, which at the weekend there was a little bit of needle to it. I saw the pre-match press conference where they put the two managers side by side. They didn't really like that. And is the beef real between these two, or is it a bit manufactured?
No, it's totally manufactured.
Is it?
There's no beef between these two managers. There's none at all. There's a little bit of it's beef, obviously between the supporters or elements of the support. But there's nothing between the managers. The fans would look at and Rangers players, normally kind of ones who are just in the country 5 minutes, very often over the years have come out with daft things before Old Firm matches, as in Rangers going, Fashion Sakala the young Rangers winger last week going, "Oh, we're the best team in Scotland." Well, like, they're not. Everyone knows they're not, and they know it for sure now since Sunday. So I think Celtic people get amused on one level, but a little bit riled on the other when Rangers repeatedly come out, these Rangers players repeatedly come out and say, "Oh, we're the best team," when Celtic have won 10 of the last 11 championships. I mean, it's a bit nuts.
The evolution of Celtic under Ange, obviously, it gets a yardstick every year in European competition, and in the immediate aftermath of that, there's a kind of existential crisis about whether or not Celtic need to completely transform their style and be really boring and clog up the defence and try and score on the break, or if they're going to just continue to embrace the philosophy of Ange, which is all singing, all dancing, a beautiful thing. And I can see why, if you're like a Celtic diehard, you're like, well, it'd be great if we could just win some games in Europe.
Yeah, and Postecoglou is not going to change for anybody. This is the way he plays. You look at the players he signs players to fit his kind of philosophy. I know it's a horrible word, but anyway, he wants high tempo. He wants energetic players. The one kind of concession he's made, kind of half concession he's made, is Aaron Moy, the Australian international. But Moy can play. I mean, Moy was excellent against Rangers. So I think Postecoglou, even like, he would point to Europe, the Champions League, and they drew twice against Shakhtar. They lost both their games against Real Madrid and RB Leipzig. But all of those games, they played well in chunks of them. They created loads of chances. I mean, the 3-0 at home, the first game in the Champions League against Real Madrid, they were the better side for close to an hour, and then Madrid said, right, okay, let's start playing here, and they won 3-0. But a lot of stuff was really good stuff, and Postecoglou will say, all right, if we keep doing this, we'll learn the lessons we learned from this Champions League, we'll bring them into next Champions League, and we'll get better. But you're right, it's the acid test, because, you know, what you look for results against expectation, and there will be no result against expectation domestically for Celtic, because they're that much better than everyone else. Like, they're miles better than 10 of the teams in the league, and they're substantially better than Rangers. So there's nothing they can do in Scotland that will make you think, wow, that was a surprise. It's only when we get to Europe. You'd almost like to fast forward into the Champions League, because they will win this league and they will go straight into the Champions League. You'd like to see, okay, have they improved against the big boys with the big budgets?
Does Ange Postecoglou's medium to long-term future lie with Celtic, Tom? Because we see when these jobs come up with the Premier League, I think he's been linked with, you know, you look at Leeds, Everton, Wolves, Southampton, Brighton. He's been linked with them all over the last year. So has he commented on his future in recent weeks? Is there any mood as to how that's going to play out?
He commented on it after the League Cup final on Sunday, Shane, and he said people will be surprised how long I'll be here. Now, I think he meant that he'll be here longer rather than shorter.
Yeah, I was going to say.
At least I think that's what he meant. Because, listen, he loves what he's doing. He's a very focused, tough cookie, sharp. And all of the noise around him doesn't seem to affect him. He will take a question. You know, if you say to him, oh, you've been linked with Leeds, he won't bite your head off for asking it. But he'll deal with it. He's got a really good verbal dexterity in all of these questions. But he loves what he's doing. He's hugely grateful for Celtic for taking a chance on him. You know, he would have been trying to get into football in this part of the world for a while. And maybe he would have been considered for jobs, he didn't get them. Celtic were the one that gave him the opportunity, and he's very, very loyal to them for that. At some stage he'll move on if he keeps going the way he is, especially if he makes some strides in Europe, he will move on. But he doesn't strike me as a man who's in a hurry to leave. Absolutely not.
We can't talk Sunday without talking one of Ange Postecoglou's signings, Kyogo Furuhashi. I mean, was it £4.6 million? And let's say, it's safe to say it's been money very well spent. That was at 26 goals now for the season. He's a revelation, Tom.
Yeah, he's been excellent for them. He's been one of the best signings in Scottish football in the last 20 years. He'd be well up there. And include Virgil van Dijk and all this. Now, he's not going to go on and have the career that Virgil van Dijk had, but certainly impact in Scottish football. He's been huge. That's 2 League Cup finals in a row where he scored the decisive goals. He's very, very dangerous player, and in Scottish football, he's probably too good for Scottish football, if you know what I mean. But Celtic fans are loving watching him. He's not just he's a fine player. He looks like an incredible character as well. So bubbly, energetic. He's a fantastic Postecoglou type player, and the fans adore him because he keeps scoring goals of different types. He's a penalty box finisher, but he can curl one in from 25 yards as well. Yeah, they're loving him, and it's not just him as well. They had 3 Japanese players in the starting lineup. Another one came off the bench. Another one was an unused sub. They had 5 Japanese lads in their match day squad, and they've all made. Certainly, the 3 that started have made big contributions. Rio Hatate has been excellent as well. So, Celtic fans are really enjoying what they're seeing from Postecoglou's team.
Is Michael Beale the real deal? He seems like he was the brains of the operation whenever he was associated with Stephen Gerrard, and he's getting his own opportunity, a real proper, expectation level. Is he the real deal?
We don't know, Jerry. I mean, I think I'm always kind of dubious about this. He was the brains behind the operation. I swear Gerrard was sitting at home watching Netflix all day and it had nothing to do with Rangers winning the league. Beale is sharp. I mean, I don't think. He was very. He was influential under Gerrard, no question. He's made a very good start to his Rangers time. Before Sunday, had won 13, drew 1. The draw was at Ibrox against Celtic, and they were leading that match until the last few minutes. I think he's reshaping his squad, reshaping his team. They're kind of stuck between the old team and the new team. He signed 2 players, Raskin and Cantwell. Everyone thought they would start on Sunday. They didn't. So you look at what Postecoglou did. He completely ripped up the team that he inherited, signed a brand new team. Beale needs to do a little bit of that, but the summer will be interesting for him.
I always look at Beale and I think of the fact that in October, wasn't it, he's turning down Wolves and saying, no, he's committing to QPR. I'm sure there's a lot of people at Queen's Park Rangers who are thinking, well, I mean, he wasn't a man of his word when he, a month later, turns down Rangers, but maybe he was waiting on an approach from Rangers.
Yeah, that when he joined Rangers, an awful lot played out, and all these quotes about undying loyalty to QPR were all thrown at him.
Didn't last long, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 36 days or something later. After that, he left to go to Rangers. So yeah, Beale. I mean, the fans have an interesting relationship with Beale. They like him. He says all the right things. I mean, you swear he'd never set foot out of Govan in his life, because he's a Rangers man and loves this club and blah 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 blah. He has to say all these things. He's clever and he says all the right things, but the proof of the pudding and all of that. And I don't think Rangers fans will condemn him for losing on Sunday, although a lot of them think he picked the wrong team. And his team weren't great at all on Sunday. I think next season will be when he's judged. They'll take comfort in the fact that since he took over, they've gone in the 14 league games, they've gone toe-to-toe with Celtic. Haven't scored as many goals as Celtic, but they've had the same number of points. So they will take comfort from that, but they will know post-Sunday that there's still a gulf between these teams, and Rangers need new blood, and they need it for next season.
The roll of honour, Rangers have won 55, Celtic have won 52. If Celtic win as you expect this year, it'll be 53. Is this something that comes up in conversation? The 9 in a row was obviously a big deal. Rangers did that. These things, when there's not much between sides, these things tend to matter a bit more.
Yeah, well, we're going into choppy waters now, Ger.
Obviously, Sevco, is that, am I? Yeah.
Well, Celtic. Some Celtic fans will say the 55 number is inaccurate, but yeah, let's not dwell on that. I think more so it's the 10 in a row That's the holy grail, because Celtic and Rangers have obviously both reached 9 in a row, and none of them have got to 10 in a row. I'm not saying Postecoglou's team are going to get to 10 in a row. Absolutely not. But look, any record that one has over the other, they will milk it, you know. But in the here and now, I think Celtic fans will be thinking, as long as Postecoglou is at the club, that Rangers won't get near them. And I think there's an element of truth in that, because his signings have been so on the money. And it's only Rangers had when they won the league, they had an outstanding season, but simultaneously Celtic were imploding and they were making a ton of bad decisions. Celtic at the moment are a club that are making a ton of good decisions, and until they start making bad ones, I can't see Rangers overtaking them.
And is Dermot Desmond likely to open the purse strings, release them a little bit for Ange, given that there is success, and he has at various stages in the past been occasionally generous?
Okay. I don't know. I guess I'll just get Dermot on the phone now. He loves talking to journalists. I think, one of the more impressive things, Ger, about what Postecoglou's done is that they sold Hudson Edward and they sold Christopher Ayer, and they got 30-something million, 35, 36 million for the two of them. He's largely rebuilt his entire team on that money. Largely, not exclusively, but largely. So it's not like he's come in and they've given him an extra 30 or 40 million to throw at the team. There's been an awful lot of trading going on. That's what's really impressive. Very little money has been wasted by Postecoglou in the transfer market. So I think Dermot Desmond obviously has been a huge part of Celtic for many, many years now, but it's not through largesse that they're achieving this.
All right. Tom, great to have you with us again. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
It's Tom English there, BBC Sport, giving us his thoughts on the old firm and the uptick in fortunes of the Scottish rugby team.
Saw a lot of pyro activity at the match of the weekend.
Was there?
Some organised and some not organised. The second half there was rockets being fired over the pitch and fireworks and this sort of thing. So reaches a point where is this dangerous, or is this a really good atmosphere? Probably somewhere in between, but I mean,
fringing.
It's fringing.
16 minutes past 9 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We'll get to your comments in just a moment. We're going to talk about the situation with the Wexford hurlers with Tom Dempsey after the break. Here's what's on the OTB Sports Podcast Network for you. The latest episodes of the Hurling and Football Pods are available right now. Monday Night Rugby with Ireland's James Ryan, and you can follow Off the Ball across our social channels. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Up next, as I said, Tom Dempsey talking to us about Wexford Clare at the weekend.
OTB AM.
OTB Sports Rugby.
I think Ross, I haven't had a fight with him yet. Over the last few years, I've probably played most of my rugby under Ross at 10s. Probably the media were a bit harsh on him over the last few years, because from what I saw inside the doors of Leinster and Ireland was someone who's calm and can make plays happen. Everyone, I think, is really comfortable with him on both teams.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's 18 minutes past 9. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. And a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, one of the big stories coming out from the hurling weekend was the annihilation of Wexford by Clare. To get the Wexford perspective, I'm delighted to say Tom Dempsey is with us this morning. Tom, how are you keeping?
Morning, Ger. How are you? It's great. It's been a bit of a bad week for me, Ger. My two great loves are Wexford hurling and Liverpool FC, so I don't know which way to turn this week. Hopefully there's brighter days ahead.
Yeah, at least with Liverpool they can sign some players, but Wexford, maybe the injured players are the bit that you can hang your hat on. You were at the game. For anybody who didn't see it, what was there an ebb and flow to it? Was it what happened?
I think there were a couple of things happened, Jaron, and I have to be very fair with Clare as well. They were bad as Oz was for Wexford, but they were an absolute pleasure to watch. You know, the Tony Kellys, the Aidan McCarthy's, the John Conlons. They were just outstanding. They were like a team that were going out in the first round of the Munster Championship, and some of their hurling was absolutely exquisite. So let's put that to bed. You know, they deserve a lot of credit for the way they played. What's happening, I think, at the moment, and I'm not looking for excuses. Wexford supporters, we don't kind of determine our love for hurling, and there's an incredible passion, a bit like Kildare yourself, Ger, an incredible passion for hurling down in Wexford as there is for football in Kildare, but it's not determined by success, but it is determined by competitiveness. And sadly, last weekend, we just weren't competitive. And I think it was the first time in a while that I've seen maybe Wexford supporters leaving at half time. Now, in fairness to the lads, Ger, I just looked down through the names. The one thing that we're missing a little at the moment is physicality and a little bit of experience. And, you know, we, Liam Ryan, Lee Chin, Rory O'Connor, Matthew O'Hanlon, Kevin Foley, Mark Fanning, our goalkeeper, and then some of the younger fellas, Oisin Foley, Richie Lawler, Connor Devitt, they were all in the dugout, or they were all in the stand. And probably compared maybe to the Limericks, to the Clares even of this world, we don't have the strength in depth. So what I think happened, and not to labour the answer, was that we went out without really our structure to our team. And my father used to always say that if you want to give young lads a run, put in 10 or 11 of your team and then put 3 or 4 young fellas in to give them a go. And I think what happened was when things went wrong, they went badly wrong. And maybe there wasn't that bit of experience on the field to turn it around. But that's no form of an excuse, because at the moment, Ger, we're not competing. We weren't competing, and we didn't have any great style to our play last weekend.
I think the main concern might be that this is a return to the dark days when the great Kilkenny team were handing out, as Sean Moran used to refer to them, the punishment beatings as a matter of routine in the Leinster Championship, and just how damaging that was for hurling people and their passion. Is like there was no sense of it was a bit like the Leinster Football Championship in recent years. There was no sense of possibility or hope. Like the season started with, everything is a precursor to a routine defeat, and then for the last 5, 6, 7 years that hasn't been the case. So I suppose there's just those ghosts hanging around where that you really hope that isn't the case this time.
There is, Ger, and sadly, Ger, we were born beside a monster, and I'm not referring to Brian Cody now, I'm referring to Kilkenny. You know, I often feel, I remember when Waterford were badly beaten in the All-Ireland final back in 2008. I just saying to some people coming out, I mean, we had to get used to that for years. And the problem with Wexford when we were in that situation was that we were using Kilkenny as a barometer where we shouldn't have been. We should have been kind of using maybe teams that were lesser down the line as a barometer, but it didn't help us. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head. I think the lads will be back. I think one of the big problems is now that we haven't really formed our plan. I mean, a team needs to be playing, you know, for maybe 4 or 5 games before they actually formulate their plan. And I think that's going to be very, very difficult. So you've hit the nail on the head. The problem at the moment, and within the county at the moment, is morale and confidence. And that's pretty much at a low ebb now at the moment. But I would want to exempt. I remember, if you don't mind me telling you, Jared, I often think I was at half time last Sunday. I mean, we were 20 points. They'd scored 4-17. And I remember an old story, whether true or not, about Babs Keating. You probably remember it yourself, where he was in the dressing room. Cork were hammering Tipperary in a packed Thurles, and Babs came in, gave him the blood and thunder speech, said, look, lads, the bottom line is that we're in our own pitch. Where's the pride in the jersey and that? And then he shouted, are we going to win? To a muted response going out for the second half. He asked Joe Hayes, Joe's a great character, are we going to win, Joe Hayes? And Joe turned around calmly and he said, I think, Babs, if you were a betting man, your money would be on Cork at this stage, you know. And I don't know how true that is, but I'd say that feeling was with a lot of Wexford players last weekend. And the one bit of credit I give, they were a very young group of players. One bit of credit I give, they went out and lost the second half by 2 points, because I tell you, Wexford Park wasn't a nice place to be for a Wexford hurler last Sunday.
Tom, if you're to analyse the reasons for such a drubbing, like if you look at James Lawler's puck out strategy, clearly Clare were happy to sit and let them have the short puck outs, but there was a couple of the goals, in fact more than a couple of the goals, came from those basic individual errors, just dropping the ball. I think David Clark and Simon Donoghue maybe dropped a couple of slitters on a couple of occasions that led to goals. Is that the concerning thing, that it's just basic individual errors?
I think so, Shane. Call me a dinosaur. I'm in my early 40s now. Only joking. I'm in my late 50s now, and some people call me a dinosaur. But I think one thing that brought something home to me last weekend was the Clare goalkeeper just took a straightforward puck out at one stage in the first half. Ball went into our square, ball dropped, and Aidan McCarthy buried it. It took about 3 seconds. The way Wexford are playing at the moment, if the plan for the short puck out is not working, we're kind of, we're not kind of reverting to the long ball. And I think we need to kind of change our plan a bit. Like, we would have had, Shane, 4 turnovers last weekend, probably from short puck outs. And it wasn't James Lawler's, it was the game plan. It was James Lawler was doing what he was instructed. But we were getting the ball, trying to bleed, you're trying to go by the likes of what do you call it, Peter Duggan, big men like this, and we were trying to beat him, move it on to the next fella. When that wasn't working, and we had about 4 turnovers, I mean, Tony Kelly, these guys love that, and goals. I think we should have changed our strategy and went long, because at least if the ball is on the other end of the field, it's a less danger than what we were doing last week. And so I think you really hit the nail on the head. The other strategy that we seem to have, we concede puckouts, but not only that, when Clare were winning ball, they were playing the ball across the full back line, 3 to 4 to 5. There was one point in the second half that John Conlon put the ball in the hurl, stopped. He actually stopped in the middle of the field. Nobody was going to him, and he just looked up and he picked somebody out. And I think if we don't start putting pressure up front to take pressure off the defence, we're going to have major problems. So, I think our strategy was wrong for last weekend, and I think we need to be able to mix that up a little bit. But that depends on winning your ball. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Shane. There was so many things wrong. And we've been down this road before, as you say, Kilkenny have done this before, and we had a great move with Davy. I just would not like to say that one swallow will define our summer. I think when we get fellas back, there's one major thing that I think is going to be in our advantage. Munster is Hell's Kitchen. And I would not like to be hurling in the Munster Championship. But if we can get it anyway right, we get the Chins back, the Rory O'Connor's back, but they need to come back very, very quickly. We can compete in Leinster, because, let's be fair, it's not as competitive. I'm a Leinster man, but I have to admit it's not as competitive as Munster. So that's one major advantage to us over the next, 2 months or, month and a half or whatever, however long we're in the Leinster Championship. But certainly we need to have a plan B, maybe a plan C. But we were going back to the same thing that wasn't working last weekend. And that really crucified us.
Are many of those players expected back in time for the championship?
Well, my understanding is they trained. I'm a Buffers Alley man and a Glenbarntown man. The kids play with Glenbarntown here, and they trained. I know Lee trained, and I think it's a cautionary measure with Lee. Rory has been back training. He's a long-term injury. So I think they're all back training now. Last weekend, and I think the pity for the younger fellas there, I don't like to use the term lambs to the slaughter, but when you haven't got your structure, you haven't got your leech-ins, Hanlon is a great leader, guys like that, Fanning is a great goalkeeper. When you haven't got those guys there, it really does leave the young fellas in between a rock and a hard place. And that's what happened last weekend. But from my information, the boys are back training. But the only problem is, Ger and Shane, that you do need, and I think John Milan said last weekend, you do need 3 to 4 games to get yourself really right for championship. We're not going to have a great run into it now, in that we're playing Galway over in Salt Hill, which is arguably the toughest game in the Leinster Championship. We have to get them back. If they're ready to come onto the field now, we have to get them back next weekend.
Is there any talk within the county about Paddy Foley? I know Darragh Egan seems to suggest that he's not home at the moment.
You see, that's a difficult one, because Paddy is, if you're talking about team morale, so if somebody goes off to Australia, comes back 2 to 3 weeks before the championship, do you use them, don't you use them? There's different views on that, because it can cause problems to morale, but also he's one of the best hurlers we've had over the last number of years. And I think one of the things that he's very, very important for, the man is a huge man. Chin is a huge man. Matthew Hanlon is a huge man. Rory's a big fella. These are all big men. These are the men that add physicality to the Wexford team. And this hasn't been there in the league so far. We've majorly had problems with physicality. But a short answer, as far as I know, at the moment, he won't be playing in the championship. He's still in Australia. But again, maybe somebody knows a bit more than I do on that one.
Can you take any strain of positivity out? It might seem strange, but a game like the weekend, Tom, because you think back to the football, we've talked about Tyrone, shipping 6 goals to Kerry in the league a couple of years ago, and they ended up having a bit of a team bonding session that night and going on to win the All-Ireland later in the summer. So I'm not saying that's necessarily what's going to happen to Wexford, but maybe you can take something out of this, and because it's such a drubbing, you can kind of reset.
Well, as the song says, the only way is up after this, but I think, you see, it's funny, Wexford are a peculiar county. We would have had an awful beating off Waterford in the league semi-final last year. We then got ourselves going. Poorish enough performance against Dublin, but we're great people to reinvent ourselves. I mean, one thing I was just thinking, I think about hurling 24/7, and when I'm not thinking about that, I'm thinking about Jurgen Klopp and how much I admire him. But we didn't win a minor title from 1985 to 2019. That's 34 years. So for a county that's not doing that, we've been doing very, very well, given that we got a good return out of the 13, that 3 under 21s in a row. But we've been doing very, very well to reinvent ourselves. And all of a sudden then, when you think things are really bad, Wexford will come back and they'll beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park as they did last year. So, look, the positives, to be honest with you, Shane, I couldn't take too many positives out of last Sunday, because it was an almighty... 4-17 in the first half to 1-6 was probably as big a score as I've seen put up against Wexford, particularly in what we would call our little sanctuary, Wexford Park. There weren't too many positives. There were a couple of guys played okay. I think Shane Reck did well. The likes of going up the field a bit. Cathal Dunbar had a good game midfield. And, Rory Higgins tried hard. So I think the secret is, if we had maybe 6 or 7 of our starters last week, I think what he needs to do is decide on those 6 or 7 and just hope, fingers crossed, that we'll get the other guys back and we'll get up and running for the Leinster Championship. And you know what? Not for the first time in Wexford. I would be hoping more than be sure about what's going to happen next.
Jamie Dominican's been in touch asking if Wexford could fall as far as Offaly have in recent years. I guess the difference is that the spine of the team is elite, and it's whether or not you have enough players who are putting the rest of the work in. And I guess the other aspect of this is that you talked about the absence of a minor title. It's okay if you're reaching finals and if you're reaching quarterfinals and moving on and players are being developed. Are the systems in place in your view at the moment?
There are systems in place, and I have to say it's not that there's not a lot of hard work going into the thing. And the management, very genuine fellas, Dara as well, very, very good guys, putting a lot of work. And we have been competitive at minor level in that. Of course, we've Galway now on board in Leinster. That's going to, I'd say we were one of the counties, we probably weren't one to see them, but I think it's right that they're in the minor championship in Wexford. We've a very good guys just taken over as well at the moment. Niall Williams, he's a Westmeath man. He's director of hurling, if I give him the right title. He's putting incredible structures in place. There's been incredible work done over the last few years. I don't know what it's like in Kildare, but I'd often liken both counties. We're not really getting there, but there's a huge amount of work. Like from Kildare's point of view, could you see where we are in Wexford?
I mean, you've opened a can of worms there, Tom. you've hit me right in my heart. I think that there has been a lot of effort made in Kildare. There's been an absence of joined up thinking. If you talk to people who have knowledge, it seems to me, for example, that in Wexford you've got the systems in place. You've a very progressive county board chairman who has really, I think, hit on something and identified what it is to be involved in Wexford GAA. And so if there's a blip at the weekend, there's no chance of this turning into what happened to Offaly, where there's lost generations. I would say you guys are further down the road in terms of the organisational off the field.
Yeah, I think so. I would pray and hope that Offaly situation. We're still the group of players and the team. Now, my worry is that some of the players, some of our leaders are getting a little bit older, but we're still a group of players that could have beaten Clare last year in the All-Ireland quarter-final, that beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park. So, I don't think we need to talk about that just at the moment. But there are a few things in Wexford that really infuriate me, Chair. And one of them, and I could take a bit like yourself, I could talk all morning about this, but there's one of the things, we have a local club championship. We have a split season in Wexford, right? And our club hurling needs to be strong for our inter-county hurling to be strong. But we have a split season now, and I just look here at the local Glenbarntown club. The hurling championship is run off probably in probably about 8 weeks, but some of the teams are out of the championship after 5 weeks. Now, what that means is the club hurler was finished hurling last August, maybe August the 2nd, and the next competitive match would probably be July, which is 9 or 10 months away. And that is no way to develop club hurling. I don't think we have a hope of improving in that situation. And we come in with little rules, which we've changed the minor grade back to 18 this year. I know it's 17 in which I think is quite correct. It's 17 nationwide or nationally. But Wexford put in then the kicker. Everybody wanted back to 18. Wexford put in a kicker that an 18-year-old then, fella that was under 18, couldn't play adult with his club. That's grand for the elite player that's getting plenty of matches. But I was talking to a young guy at the weekend. He plays for a non-fashionable club. His minor team next year are not going to be, they'll be gathering players to get games. They won't go very far, maybe get 3 or 4 games. So he can't play adult level for his club. And I just think that's crazy. I think we're not thinking through some of the decisions we're making. That's not going to develop that young player. And it just sometimes you sit back and you're perplexed by all this and saying, where do they come up with some of the ideas, really? And that, there's 100 different things that I think could be improved. But the GAA, for me, great organisation, whatever. But sometimes they're bringing out rules that are hamstringing ourselves, really.
Yeah, there's definitely a period of unintended consequences of the split seasons that we're going to have to work through over the next couple of years and try and find common sense answers to most of the problems. But Tom, great stuff. Great to have you with us, and sorry for your trouble on the Liverpool front.
Look, lads, I have absolute confidence in Jurgen Klopp, I should say. I think he's going to bring us back. And listen, it's an absolute pleasure. Keep up the good work, lads. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thanks a million. Cheers. That's Wexford legend Tom Dempsey giving us some thoughts on the current situation. On tomorrow's show, we have Phil Healy talking to us about the boom in Irish athletics at the moment. Keith Wood, I put that point to him earlier about the process versus outcome. We'll have Kathleen McNamara's updated Irish women's national team power rankings, plus plenty more as well besides. Some of your comments from earlier on. Eric Lawler.
United fans have been in touch.
Yeah. Morning. I see the debate over Bruno and off the ball. How is there even a debate? Bruno's been brilliant, a real leader, worked so hard and has even stepped up his goal contributions under Eric Ten Hag. Tell your pals in there I'm not having it.
I'm with you, Eric. I'm with you. Understand.
Philip Nolan says, more Man United lads, give the people what they want. See, is he being sarcastic?
No, I actually don't think he is. I listened to a podcast called Talk of the Devils with Andy Mitten and Laurie Whitwell, guys who've been on the show before. Presented to Manchester United podcast. It's gone to number 1 in the UK in terms of football podcasts. When teams are doing well, people want to hear more and more about them. So yeah, it's just in the nature. United fans are on a buzz at the moment that won't seem to dissipate.
Ronan Conlon says Fernandes is massively overrated.
Stop. No, not a chance is he massively overrated. If anything, it's the opposite. He gets a lot of hate and criticism. He's been imperative to United's rise, if you want to call it this season. Eric Ten Hag is the fulcrum, clearly. There was a lovely video where he had a chat with Kobe Mainoo, one of the young United players. I don't know if you saw that after the match, and he's like hugging him, pointing at the lads, parading the trophy, and I don't know what he's saying to me. He suggested he sent him, this is what is ahead of you. But people love him in the club.
Bruno and Harry Maguire were coming down the steps of the plane with Ten Hag in the middle, Ten Hag holding the cup, and he was wearing a hat. I was like, who's the guy in the middle?
He looked different, didn't he?
I didn't recognise him at all.
Yeah, bald is best.
I did not recognise him. I was like, who's the Peaky Blinders fella? Who's the, what was your man, Carl, whatever his name, he used to join the team photographs.
Yeah.
He looked completely different.
Fairly dapper looking.
I wouldn't mind seeing him with a wig just to see what the difference is.
I've seen photos of him cycling around Manchester with a helmet on, and I was like, oh, is that Eric Ten Hag? Yeah, he looks different.
Definitely feeling himself. Alan O'Neill says Tommy and Derek, what a lineup. And Zen TV says Ange isn't going anywhere anytime soon, Shane. So he says, unless the surprise, as Tom English was pointing out, was that actually
the other way.
Yeah. But if Spurs come, I think Spurs are going to be looking for a manager in the off-season. I think they're going to qualify for the Champions League, and I think Conte is going to go. I think that's a strong possibility at this stage.
I think Ange wants to succeed with Celtic in European football first. Like you look at the Graham Potter. Like Graham Potter's had Chelsea calling, and maybe he shouldn't have gone. Hindsight again.
He's set up for life.
Well, financially, yeah, but where's his next job after Chelsea?
Well, I don't know. It could be anywhere, and I think he'll still be. If he's written his contract correctly, he'll be on offset money. And he'll be Chelsea will be paying him for the whole 7 years.
Yeah, fair.
I love Tom as a guest and a pundit. Says Shifty lad. Tom F1 in Dublin 1 says that was great, Derek. I always believed Ross's passing wasn't as accurate. Then again, I'm a rank amateur. Stats are there to back it up. Game plan of team with different tens could also be a factor. I think, look, loads of stuff factors into your understanding of the analytics, and all we're trying to do is say that there's another way of analysing the game than it's about passion and it's about heart and it's just a fight. I think there's more to it than that, and hopefully we're bringing some of that out. We were on the game in time, ball in play time 3 weeks before it was voguish, but everybody's talking about it all the time now. So anyway, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Let's hear from James Ryan in conversation with Joe Malloy. Have a swell afternoon.
So James Ryan is linking up with Aldi and their Play Rugby sticker campaign. I'll give you more details about that campaign in due course. Brilliant prize on offer. Very happy to say James Ryan joins us on the line. Good evening to you. Thanks for the time.
Good to be here.
Let's start with the most important issue. You were party to maybe the slowest version of Ireland's call in history at the weekend.
Yeah. I don't know how, like, you've one job. I don't know how I got that wrong. But yeah, I don't know what was happening. It was like people in the crowd were way ahead of us. The guys next to me were behind me, and they just ended up just not singing anymore because it was just chronic.
Yeah.
So it's a shame.
I can imagine. Hard to know what to do here. Do we keep singing at our own pace? Do we slow down to their crazy pace, or do we just, as some understandably did, just abandon ship halfway through? I think you manfully carried on to the end.
Yeah, I carried on to the end, I think, and then Porter was standing next to me, and he abandoned ship. So I think I stayed on to the end, but yeah, it wasn't great.
No, listen, you're the captain. You have to keep going there. There's no getting off that ship. Talk to us about Italy. There is no doubt that they are seriously improving. Can you give us a sense specifically how, in what ways are they a very different challenge to 2-3 years ago?
Well, I think they're one of the best attacking sides we've faced in quite a while, to be honest. Particularly their attack has really come on. You can see how ambitious they are to play. Like, you know, even in the lead up to the game, you know, against England, against France, they're playing deep inside their own 22. Again, same against us. So they just play a good brand of rugby, and they like to play quick. They like to play the space. So defensively, it was a really tough game for us. So that's probably where they've improved a lot. The other, I think, is probably the set piece. Like, I mean, the scrummaging wise, they're quite good. They kind of drove the England pack back a few times to Twickenham, which is no easy feat in the scrum, and they were good against us as well. You know, some of their maul defence was very good as well. And we had a number of cracks, and they were hard to break down. So up front, they're strong. But as I said, obviously, they've a seriously good attack as well, and some genuinely world class players. I think, like Capucho is obviously one that sticks out. He's a seriously good player. You saw how good a Garbisi is. We know that. He loves to play at the line, play flat. So, you know, McNamara was another good player. So they've some good up and coming players as well.
Yeah. Great for the tournament. I mean, to have them improving and playing such a brilliant brand is wonderful. From the Irish team's perspective, not least when the Grand Slam is vaguely on the horizon and there's a lot to lose in a game like Saturday if it goes awry. It was very striking, 4 points in the game. The team, Ireland that is, didn't seem to tighten up or feel that pressure, scored a brilliant team try. That must be a very pleasing aspect to come through a tetchy few moments like that. What do you put that down to?
Yeah, well, the last try was brilliant for us. Like, it was one of the best team tries I think we've had. But like, to be honest, I thought we were a bit unlucky to be going in at half time 24-17 up. I thought we'd left a couple of scores out there, and obviously they got that intercept, and all of a sudden the game felt very close, 24-20. But I think what I put it down to is probably just some of the messages at half time. Like, what we said was, the game was close, but like, we want to be tested. Do you know what I mean? This is where we want to be. So some of the messages at half time were very much like, just stick to our process, stick to our game, because we felt certainly when we had the ball that we were putting them under a lot of pressure, and it was just a very final piece, whether that was a disc-led try, a knock-on, that we were just letting them off the hook. But we just said, look, if we could hold on to the ball, stick to our game, build pressure, then we felt like we could, if we kept turning the rock, then we'd eventually break them. So obviously, that's the way it was very tough, but that's the way it turned out in the end. We managed to build a bit of a score. So I think just sticking to our game and keep believing that our attack would eventually wear them down.
Must be an enjoyable attack to be part of over the last while. The demands on your skill set, on your handling, on your ability to make good choices, I presume those demands have increased dramatically of late.
Yeah, and it is enjoyable. Probably a lot of it is down to the way we train. Like we train very quick, but and the detail around some of our shapes. A lot of teams play shapes, but just the detail understanding of how the right shapes will break down in opposition. So yeah, it's enjoyable, and then obviously. Everyone's got to be involved in the attack. That's also what we say, even when the ball is not near you, when the ball's away from you. How are you getting back involved into the game? So it's very much kind of all hands on deck, and 1 to 15, everyone's got a role to play in terms of breaking down the opposition. But yeah, no, it is an enjoyable. It's an enjoyable attack to be involved in, because we all like to play rugby and get our hands on the ball and stuff like that. So
nice to score a try.
Enjoying it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Lots of people have made the observation that you seem to be in a great personal vein of form. Sure, it's easier in a team that's going well, but do you feel like you phrase it how you want. Do you feel like you've come through a dip and now you're back to your best? Or am I wrong to call it a dip, given that there were injuries and other things going on? But would you agree that you're kind of back in a great place now, or how do you see your own form?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going well. To be honest, what I put that down to is, I haven't had any injuries or head injuries for quite a while. So I've just been playing much more regularly, and off the back of that, my confidence has grown. And probably my performance has gone all right as well. So, so yeah, just being lucky that I haven't been in and out of the game or had any long spells, or windows out of the game, and I've just been playing more regularly. So, so that's why I'm feeling good, and yeah, just enjoying being part of 2 very good teams with Leinster and Ireland.
I just glanced back in advance of talking to you to see what a desperate run you were on with injuries. It was like as bad as it gets, really, and it must have been very difficult. 2021, there were head injuries against Wales and Scotland, rounds 1 and 4 of the Six Nations, several weeks out afterwards, and then the disappointment of missing the Lions. Then fast forward to November, Fela HIA against Argentina, out until December, and then last year's Six Nations, people will remember 11 months ago, the Charlie Ewells hit at Twickenham, red card, zero mitigation, like a terrible bang, and you could see, you were wobbly, and it was serious. Now you read that list out in that kind of a condensed period. That strikes anyone as incredibly difficult to come through. World Rugby Protocol enforce time away when they're that frequent, so you did spend some time away. Were you dealing with symptoms as well in the days and weeks after some of those injuries?
Yeah, no, it was tough. It was 4 and 6 months that particular season, so obviously that's why it took me a while to feel like I could get my confidence back. But no, I wasn't dealing with any ongoing symptoms. For me, thankfully, anytime I've had a concussion, I've always recovered very quickly. So, like, really, after 48 hours, I would feel fine for normal. So, I've been lucky enough that I've always recovered quite quickly. And yeah, I mean that's why I'm feeling good, because for me, I love the kind of physical parts of the game: the tackle, the carry, the ruck.
Yeah.
And probably when you've got a number of head knocks, it takes you, even maybe subconsciously, a little bit of time to feel like you can express yourself the way you want to in those parts of the game. Probably because you're afraid of the consequences of another knock, or what that would mean, or how long you would be out for, and all that. So so that's why, as I said, I'm feeling good now, because thankfully I've had an injury-free run, and I feel like I can be, the player I want to be.
Because for you to be at your best, you have to throw yourself around with abandon. You can't be, as you said, on some kind of subconscious level trying to protect yourself. It's just not going to work. I mean, you can function, you can have a 6 out of 10 game, but it's not going to work from where the levels you want to hit. But very understandable. Like, the self-preservation instinct is a strong one. That would take a bit of getting over, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's it, and that's the parts of the game that I pride myself on, and it's where I see my game. It's all the physical parts of the game. So, that's why it takes you a little bit of time, because even if you're 1% off, that even makes a difference. As I said, I'm feeling good now, and there's a lot of work that's gone into it as well. Obviously, there's a bit of luck involved, and sometimes, you can't prepare for some of the knocks that you end up getting. I mean, that one against England, those obviously sticks out. There's nothing you could do there really that could, that you could have prepared for. But I've worked very hard in terms of mitigating risk, and I know I've mentioned before, but I work very hard on my neck strength. Probably it's one part of my body that I train the hardest, the most consistently. I worked in the technical parts of the game, like the tackle tech and carry tech and all that kind of stuff. We wear gum shields now that basically are able to track the G-force in collisions. So I'll be pretty studious with that stuff and make sure that if I don't play for a while, say, I'm getting the exposures through the gum shield in the lead up to a game. So it's not just playing a game. I've not played for a while, and all of a sudden there's this big increase in load. There's a number of different areas that I've worked hard on, along with some of the physios in Leinster and Ireland as well, to put myself in the best possible position. So thankfully it seems to be going all right.
Yeah, great. The neck muscle strength presumably to minimise whiplash.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of science now that how much your neck protects you for the whiplash stuff, but and also when you do get a knock, if you've got a neck that is strong and is nice and robust, then you're not going to get your symptoms won't be as severe as they would have been otherwise, say if you had a weaker neck. And particularly for some of the taller guys who have just naturally longer limbs and longer necks and so on, they're probably actually more risk. So that's been a big focus for me, training my neck.
Yeah. One last one on it. When the Yules one happens, because as you say, there's nothing you can do to protect yourself in a moment like that. You're vulnerable, you get hit, you can be as diligent as you want, you're in trouble. Given the run you had been on, I presume there must have been an emotional, be it in the seconds or minutes or hours afterwards, of, oh my God, what is happening here? How can I be on this run? What is going on?
Yeah, and it was tough because I was gutted after that one. Because, as I said, it was no different last year. I was still working unbelievably hard on all this stuff, because I know that I wanted to. I didn't want to be out of the game. I hadn't had enough of that. So it was frustrating. Then when I got another knock, but at the same time, sometimes, that's just the way the game is. I took up a little bit of solace because I actually said, well, you know what, none of this. This was most recent knock, none of it was down to me. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't, a tackle tech or a carry tech or just sloppiness. That was the reason why I got this knock. It was completely out of my hands. So there was a bit of look. It's out of my hands, and kind of keeping the faith and knowing that what I was doing was the right stuff and it was going to pay off eventually. So I kind of kept that in mind as well.
And so you've clearly taken a comfort perhaps in being very diligent about this subject and been analytical about this subject. What about the worries when you see, you've got a long life ahead of you and potentially things can go awry, and we've seen that with previous generations. The worries that you might have or that your family have, or, does anyone say, do you need this? Like maybe just take what you've done as a great career and park it. That whole discussion, does that happen in the Ryan household?
No, it's not. It's not happening because I think one thing that gives some of the physios and my own family confidence is they know, as he said, how analytical, how studious, how hard I work in terms of putting myself in the best possible position to minimise any risk. And obviously, I'm sure you've heard of this before, but we are looked after better now than at any point in the history of the game. Yeah. So we're looked after very well, and even those windows and spells that I had out of the game, that's just an example because they didn't want to put me at risk, and they wanted to make sure that I had fully recovered before I stepped on the field again. And I saw a number of specialists at the time and guys that are at the cutting edge of brain health. One guy in Birmingham Hospital who's probably one of the best in the world, and it was off the back of their advice and their expert opinion that I was able to kind of navigate my path back to playing the game and stuff like that. So so we had plenty of conversations with the very best, and they gave me the go ahead, and that's very much what I would believe in and would base my opinion on would be these guys. And so I was delighted to get back out playing, and as I said, it's been the last time I got knocked was the Ealing game, so I've been on a good run, thank God.
Yes, long may it continue. Captaincy, I saw you say during the week that you're a lead by example type of captain, put the fear of God into them, Paul O'Connell model. That's not you, that's not a place you go to, is it?
I don't really know. I mean, I just tried to lead by example. I think that's what the best captains I've played under do. Johnny's one of them, and see how good he is, how consistent he is with his performance. I think obviously his words carry a lot of weight then off the back of that. So yeah, I just try to lead by example in terms of my actions.
Yes, it would strike me as a tricky thing for a captain. Say you're, and dare say you will be in due course. If you're not playing well, I would think words out of your mouth might feel a touch hollow. You'd like performance first, and I can't really tell. Give a halftime speech if I'm stinking the joint out.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's part of the most important piece of being a captain is making sure that you get your own performance right. And that you're consistent, because if you're not getting your own stuff right, you're not performing well. But then, as you said, your words aren't going to carry as much weight. So, obviously, doing what you say you're going to do is very important.
Something to ask you about on-field decisions. There was a lot of scrutiny about the decision to kick for the corner in Paris last year. Probably overanalyzed, but that's your lot now, and that's the way life is. The decision against Italy, and this, I don't know what the right or wrong decision here is, genuinely, so I'd love to get inside your thought process. It was early in the second half and the game is back to 7 points, and on 2 occasions Ireland turned down the 3 just to nudge it out to 10. Later on you did actually kick a penalty to go 27-20, but in those 2 moments, say the one where it went to the corner and Ireland lost the line out, what's your logic there? Is that a 50-50 decision in your mind? Were you dead set this is the right thing to do, or how is that decision arrived at, James?
First thing I'd say is that it's very much a joint decision.
Right.
So myself, along with Ross, at half, and Hendy, who was the line leader on the weekend, kind of make the decision together, and that's kind of generally how that process works. Certainly between the at half and the line corner. And the first one, we spoke, and we, it wasn't an easy kick. There was quite a bit of length in it, so it was by no means a gimme. And look, we felt like the right option was to go to the corner. After chatting, we did. The second decision, very easily could have gone either way. We could have gone for the points as well. and it was an aggressive decision to go for the corner. What we felt at the time, which was the feel out there, was that like we were pounding the rock, and we had these guys. So that's why we decided to go for the corner, because we felt like we could come away with more than 3.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the decision there. And then, the last chance, we had, obviously when we went to the points, then we said, look, we've had a few cracks to this now. Let's extend the lead to 7, because I felt we could back our defence not to concede a try at that point. So that was kind of the decision making behind it.
Totally understand. These are always popular talking points afterwards, and with the benefit of knowing how it turned out, which is a benefit, a luxury you don't have. How big a talking point are they in the review this week in camp? Will much time be spent on James, Ross, guys, give us your thoughts here, or is it not something that's talked about all that much?
I don't know. We'll have to see. But I would say one thing in Irish camp is not very outcome driven.
Yes.
Like, it's very much process focused, and whatever decision we do make, how did we deliver that in terms of the process? What actions did we deliver then off the back of whatever decision we made, as opposed to being purely outcome based.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.